If we could time travel to the end of the season, who are the players we'd most want to know the results for? That's what we're going to talk about today on The Long View. I'm Ben Gretch. You can find the Stealing Signals newsletter at bengretch.substack.com. With me, as always, is Jakob Sanderson. You can find his Thinking About Thinking newsletter also at substack.com, jakobsanderson.substack.com. I got to get used to the intro. It's too similar. But we are going today, we have a long, so first of all, it's funny because we just started this pod. We had this idea for the short view. We've joked about it the first couple episodes. The idea was for us to get through more topics. I think it's gone well. You've been trying to cut corners. You're like, we've been on the short view so long.
I've been keeping this show on such a tight leash as it's been going 2 hours and 15 minutes on average.
But we are starting at a time of year where we told you guys in the first couple episodes the short view was going to get long. It's going to be very long today. We're going to talk about a lot of different stuff. You sent over a little bit of some notes of some things that we're going to go over. I haven't really even looked through them, but it's a long list. And so I'll kick it to you in a second for the short view stuff. We'll talk about that for, it'll be like an hour of the show probably. This may be a long show is what I'm getting at here at the top. Then we'll go into our long view topic. Our long view topic of the day is going to be a draft between me and Jacob. We are going to draft players that if we could know at the end of the year, the final results, really just usage like carries or targets, receptions and yards and touchdowns. If we could know those specific results, and we set these parameters, we talked about it. We don't get to know everything like target share, where you start to learn stuff about the team situation. We don't get to know things like where they finished, whether they finished RB5, because then you learn a lot of things about the position and all that. It's just specifically an individual's results. Who would you most want to know? Who, and ultimately, obviously, the point is, who's going to define the season? Whose results at this point, if we knew them, would help us articulate our strategy better, would help us understand how we want to play the 2026 fantasy football season. This is an idea you pitched to me when we were going over all of the early stuff for this show, that this would be something we could do every August. People who listen to my Stealing Bananas podcast with Sean Siegel know every August we do a show where we predict next year's first and second round ADP. People tend to love that one. They tend to ask for that one every year. When's that show going to come? This is a show that we're doing today that we hope to make an annual show here at the Long View. It's a great idea. It's a fun one. It's a great concept. And so we're going to spend a lot of time on it. It's probably going to be a long show. We both have our list of guys, and we're going to go back and forth and draft those guys, who we think are the most important players back to back, and probably snipe each other a little bit. But before we get into that whole concept, there's a ton of news and notes. So we got a long show. We're doing one show a week right now. It's too much to cover to have short shows at this point. So how you doing, and what are we looking at for the short view?
I'm doing good. I didn't schedule a date for tonight, so we can go as long as we want. I won't be cutting you off at the short window of time of 137 minutes. And I typed up almost a full page of short view topics, and that was like while I was making the list. I had several other items that I thought about typing in and like self-cut before it even got there. So we have a ton. This is obviously not an exhaustive list of every interesting thing that happened at training camp, because there's like 100 of those, but these were, I thought, some of the most interesting ones. I'm going to run these through in rapid fire, just like we did last week. And then, Ben, you pick whichever.
You're going to do all of them rapid fire? Maybe we should cut this up a little bit. We'll see.
All right, let's cut it up. Let's cut it up a bit. All right, that sounds like a good plan. So why don't I start with transaction news, all right?
Okay.
Biggest one, the Washington Commanders signed Stefon Diggs yesterday. That's a huge one. The next one up is what happened right between us recording and our show getting released last week, which was the 49ers signing Deebo Samuel. We haven't gotten a chance to talk about that one. And then we got some contract extensions. Jonathan Taylor, 2-year extension. Bijan Robinson, 3-year extension. Jahmyr Gibbs is widely expected to get a 3-year extension. So that's the transaction news we'll start with. And then we have a bunch more news to get into after that.
Yeah, the extensions to me, I never really, I guess, care that much about at this time of year. Good players getting paid. The Diggs thing is fascinating. I just wrote up a piece today where I reprojected the Commanders. People who subscribe to the newsletter know that I release my full projections at the end of July, and then I don't update them. Explained a lot about why in the post today. It would just be too difficult. There's a ton of stuff that changes. The guys at ETR have a whole team doing it, and they have a change log, and they're updating their projections every day. It takes a lot of time. It took me hours this morning to reproject the Commanders with Diggs and reconsider all the target shares and how the different target depths overlap. One of the interesting things that I came to in going through that process was Diggs the last couple of years been a little bit of a lower ADOT guy at about an 8.5 ADOT, below the wide receiver average. He's going to replace routes that the Commanders had a lot of like deep threats, like Traylon Burks, higher ADOT guy. Jalen Lane played to a higher ADOT. De'Ami Brown was a little lower a couple years ago when he was on this team. He's back, but he's typically been a higher ADOT guy. Diggs is taking targets away from higher ADOT guys, bringing them to more of a lower ADOT area of the field. And I think that makes a lot of sense in the sense that Terry McLaurin, your number one, is a high ADOT number one. He's like a downfield guy. Diggs is a lot more complimentary, and it actually sort of fits better than how the different like wide receivers fit together. And so one of the other things that happened for me when I was projecting it out again with Diggs was I took some targets from the running backs. I took some targets from the tight ends, some of the other lower ADOT short area stuff. Certainly Okonkwo was one of the guys I think that gets hit the hardest. And Williams takes a big hit as well. He's now
massive hit.
Massive hit for him. He was looking like a potential, interesting like number two ball in hand guy, but maybe gets enough volume. Now he's a number three, and like he's a low ADOT ball in hand guy.
I don't even think he's that.
Yeah, he didn't get a ton of production in college. I do like that they use him as a rusher, use him as a returner. What do you mean you don't think he's that?
Well, I liked Williams a decent amount coming out of college. I just mean the training camp stuff on him had been pretty bearish. He had like not made any impact. He was mostly playing with the third team. And by all accounts, prior to the Diggs, their starting three receiver set was planned to be McLaurin, Burks, Luke McCaffrey in the slot. But it seemed like Williams like still needed to even pass guys like De'Ami Brown, Van Jefferson, Jalen Lane. It's like he seemed pretty buried. So I would also say like Williams really profiled as more of a slot guy. If I had to guess, I think that their three receiver set now would be Diggs in the slot, McLaurin on the outside, and Burks. I think probably is their other outside guy is what I would guess. I'm sure it'll be.
Are you not hearing a lot about? You're not hearing a lot about De'Ami Brown?
No, not that much.
Okay.
The guys that have gotten the bulk of the positive reports, there was like a lot of Van Jefferson hype early. That's cooled a little bit. Burks has gotten constant positive talk, and he's been the starting outside receiver so far. And then Luke McCaffrey was winning the slot job. I'm guessing that job probably goes to Diggs, and there'll be some rotation elements. And I mean, there'll probably be a lot of rotation elements because they have like a lot of guys. But I suspect now, like Williams' path gets pretty cloudy because, first of all, there's really only one spot left in three receiver sets. It's clearly going to be McLaurin and Diggs, but I would rather use Diggs in the slot, right? So I think probably I'm guessing their third guy is an outside guy. Otherwise, it would be Williams playing in the slot with Diggs outside, and
they just don't have enough playmakers, and they took him on day two.
No.
You don't think they're going to find ways to? I mean, they didn't really find ways to.
I think that they would if they liked him. I just think the signals have been bearish that like he can't get any reps with the ones at all. He hasn't.
They're so bad,
and then they went out and signed Stefon Diggs, right? Like my guess is if they liked more of what they saw with Williams, they might have signed Stefon Diggs. So
they took Luke McCaffrey in the second round. They took Jalen Lane in. What is it? The third round? I would have to pull up all their.
I think it was McCaffrey in the third and Lane in the fourth or the fifth. I think the fourth.
I'm way too. I'm elevating all the status of all these guys. Yeah, Lane was a fourth round pick. I'm pulling it up now. McCaffrey was a third. Ben Sinnott was the second.
Yeah,
but like their recent like.
It's rough.
Draft capital into skill position players. They've not developed like any of them or used any of them. It's weird. I mean, obviously Ja'Cory Krosky-Merritt being a glaring example as a seventh rounder who had 800 yards and 8 touchdowns as a rookie, but kind of weird. Now they go out and they use another third-round pick on Antonio Williams. And I mean, when you say he's running with a third team and stuff,
over.
I mean, we're 2 weeks
August,
into camp.
Like,
we're 2
we
weeks
are.
into
It's
camp.
just like for a guy who's, like, I don't know. For a guy who goes in round 3, I mean, the base rate for a round 3 picks is not great. So I just prefer to hear something positive, like
So
it's tough.
We're basically talking about whether Antonio Williams would have had a role if Diggs hadn't signed, which is we're off to a great start on the short.
I guess
view.
that's what I'm saying is like it wasn't pointing very positively for him to have an immediate role without Diggs.
Anyway.
Yeah. And then they just added Diggs, which probably continues to speak to them not being wowed, right? Like, for instance, we're going to talk. I have both of these guys on the list to talk about later, but like, there's been reports that the Ravens have been impressed enough with Jacoby Lane and to some extent Surratt that they're not looking to add a receiver anymore. There's been reports that the Patriots were looking to replace Julian Hill with a veteran tight end. They've been so impressed with Eli Raritan. That's no longer a priority for them, right? The Commanders reached the opposite conclusion. They got to watch Antonio Williams for a couple months and decided we should sign Stefon Diggs. That's not going to define his career, but like it's not what you would want to hear to me.
Yeah, I mean, I'm going to fade that entire line of logic personally. I think every team does that stuff differently, and we do way too much comparing. Like, I mean, I do think it's interesting that the Ravens came to that conclusion, and the Lane hype is interesting, and I do think the Raritan hype is interesting with the Patriots. But I'm not going to make strong conclusions about Antonio Williams' career based on the fact that they brought
I'm not making it on his
a
career, but I think he's a tough guy to draft in 2026.
Sure. Yeah, he's a tough guy to draft. But as far as Diggs and the rest of the guys and how that all fits, it is really interesting. We're getting into just a nuance. It's a really interesting time right now. One of the things I was thinking might come up, or I was going to ask you about, is how if you're getting these comments from people, from subscribers, from readers, from whoever, you do a lot more on social media, from social media people. Where I feel like we are in you can just say shit season. Like, people are just saying whatever they want. Yeah. I wrote that piece and I got. One of the reason I'm saying that is one of the replies. It's like Mad Libs. One of the replies I got was talked a little bit about what I said about some of the receivers. And then it was like, but none of the receivers are going to be able to be good if Jayden Daniels doesn't get better at throwing like accurate passes or something.
Yeah, no. If you sometimes I read the replies to things and it's just like, it's like utter nonsense. Yeah, and it's like now typically I don't mean this from thinking subscribers. The vast majority of comments that I get from subscribers are like pretty reasonable. But yeah, if you want to go on social media, I mean, you'll just get like
that's where it's the worst. But
you'll
like just to defend the Jayden Daniels point, like this is the long view pod. I mean, he struggled last year. He was hurt for most of the year. He only had 244 dropbacks. The year prior, he made it to the NFC Conference Championship, basically carried the team there through just throwing dimes on fourth downs all throughout the year. Awesome. People thought Dan Quinn was like this fourth down genius because Jayden Daniels kept making him right with dime after dime. He went into Detroit and upset the Lions with he hit De'Ami Brown on a huge play on a great throw down the field. Like, the whole thing was predicated on the fact that Jayden Daniels was throwing such great deep balls that he was creating so much space around the line of scrimmage and allowing for their, run pass option stuff around the line of scrimmage to work. He completed 68.4% of his passes as a rookie in the NFL with bad receivers, with objectively bad receivers.
That team. It was Terry McLaurin and like a bunch of absolute goofs. Who else was even on that team? It was
De'Ami Brown was like their number 2. Zach Ertz
was like legitimately number 2. Zach Ertz. The running backs were B-Rob and Eckler
and Austin Eckler. Yeah.
And who I don't even remember who their wide receivers. It was like some rotation of like random guys. It was like
McCaffrey was the rookie that year. McCaffrey was the rookie that didn't do anything. Some other
dust ball veteran on the team. Was Curtis Samuel still a part of that team? I have no idea.
Oh my God. That seems possible. I'm going to look it up because
I'm going to look up Commanders Pro Football Reference.
Olamide Zaccheaus, 64 targets that year. Noah Brown. Everyone thought Noah Brown was super good. Oh God.
How is it that
Jamison Crowder was on that team?
Jesus. How is it that the Commanders seem to just consistently have like 8 different like guys who are like Noah Brown or like Noah Brown adjacent, individuals. Like it's just a constant rotation of that.
Yeah. That's why I'm not worried about Antonio Williams, because they have 97 dudes on the team. Like they have so many guys to get reps for. Hey, he's working with a third team. He's already passed like 7 guys. Like he's doing great. But no, Diggs. As far as actually like how I projected it and how I see this going and Commander signing Diggs, I moved Terry McLaurin's target share down, I think 1.5 percentage points. I think I had it at 24.5%, went down to 23.0. That's like a meaningful drop, but so some of that was because I had his ADOT coming down a little. I had him doing a little bit more in the short and intermediate range because as I talked about, some of the other receivers, more higher ADOT guys like Luke McCaffrey, not a huge target earner if he's going to be in the slot, etc. I now moved McLaurin's ADOT a bit higher. That is going to correlate a little bit with more per target efficiency. It's a little bit less overall volume, and he comes down from what I had as a pretty lofty projection for him. It's still strong. Like he still looks like a solid pick in the range he was going in. I had him as a value before from a kind of a projection standpoint. Now there are more upside plays, wide receiver plays in that range, but I do think McLaurin is a pretty safe receiver in that range. So I've always been pretty out on McLaurin. I've talked about him as like very good but not elite, and one of the reasons I've kind of come back around to him is the ceiling for wide receiver has come down in a way that now McLaurin's like his inability, he's never had a 1,200 yard season. Well, I do think he may have his first 1,200 yard season if he stays healthy. He's coming off 2 of his better years with Jayden Daniels. Last year was a partial year, but had the best yards per out run of his career, if I'm not mistaken. Had some career highs. Maybe it was targets per out. And he's been efficient on a yards per target basis both the last couple years still too. He turns 31 in September. He is getting a little older. But he's a good player. He's an efficient player, and now that he's played in a little bit of a better offense for him and a better QBs, we're seeing like a little bit more meat on the bone. Now, I don't think he's going to magically get 150 targets. That's never been his game, but I do think there's room for him to have that 1,200-yard season, get a little bit better. And in today's NFL, in 2026, if he has that 1,200-yard season, that's meaningfully better than it was 4 or 5 years ago when I was first like anti-Terry McLaurin for people that have been like subscribers to my newsletter and stuff. So it's working 2 ways. I think he's got a little bit higher ceiling than he's ever really had because the situation is pretty nice for him. And the ceiling at wide receivers coming back toward Terry McLaurin a little bit. I think he's draftable in that range. I don't think he's like a huge target. Diggs, to me, wound up like just above the other veteran receivers, right where there's that break in the wide receiver window where the last rookies are going. And so I had him like just above Jalen Coker, just above Jacoby Myers and Romeo Doubs and those types. I did have Diggs above those guys, but I see him as sort of a capped ceiling type. Some people I'm seeing...
You'd have him a tier below like Chris Godwin.
Yes. And I'm seeing some people that are putting him closer to McLaurin in target earning. I think my perception of it would be McLaurin's been in the offense for 2 years. Diggs signed in August, and Diggs turns 33 in November. He's 2 years older, and it's a meaningful 2 years. He had a really good year in New England last year. One of the things about the per route stats that everyone's saying on Diggs and how strong they were, he was horrible in the postseason in terms of like yards per out run relative to that. He was at like a 2.5 yards per out run in the regular season. You add his postseason, he comes down to like 2.0-ish. It brought him down a ton. And that's when they played the 4 tough defenses. I think that's really relevant. You had a big postseason sample of 4 games playing tough defenses. The only time they played tough defenses, New England famously had a really easy defensive schedule last year. Drake May, for example, led the league in EPA per play throughout the regular season and then really struggled in the postseason, was below average. I mean, he was like 11th out of the 14 starting QBs in EPA per play, and he won 3 games in the postseason. So anyway, the Patriots struggles as a passing offense in the postseason, and Diggs struggles as a number 1 to go win against tougher secondaries and legit number 1 cornerbacks. I don't think is being discussed enough when people just focus on the regular season
I don't
data.
think they'll have to face number 1 cornerbacks, though, in this spot, which will be more beneficial.
For sure. But in terms of, yes, absolutely. In terms of what Diggs still is, I'm hearing a lot of taking last year and saying, and he's going into a great spot. So I'm just going to like start last year and then arrow up from there. And what I'm trying to say is, first of all, I don't think you're like for people that are just looking at the really good per route numbers in season. a regular season. I don't think they're getting the full picture of last year. Second of all, when I talk about him turning 33 this year, and when I talk about having McLaurin meaningfully higher in target share, like I ended up projecting Diggs for an 18.5% target share. I've seen some numbers above 20%. Maybe that's more fair. He's got a better target earning track record. But again, he's turning 33. McLaurin's turning 31. And that's a big 2-year gap in terms of those age cliffs at wide receiver. And then the point I'm trying to drive home about where we're starting on Diggs. The numbers last year were fantastic. I was in on Diggs. I had him on a few teams, and I was excited about the way that he played last year. I still think we should have been regressing his last year regardless. If he was in New England, we should have been regressing. They played only good offenses or defenses, and then when they played tough ones, it was a real struggle. And now you're going to a new team. You're joining a new system. You're learning a whole new playbook in August, a month before the season. I think it's a little bit of an uphill climb for him. I think giving him an 18.5% target share for the year acknowledges that Stefon Diggs has always been a stud, but he's 33 now, and he's stepping into a new spot. And yeah, I mean, he's going to beat out Okonkwo and Williams and all these other guys, Traylon Burks for targets for the most part. I don't think he's like coming for Terry McLaurin in a major way. And McLaurin has that 2-year connection with Jayden Daniels, has been really efficient the last couple years. I think it's like, I don't think it's good for McLaurin, but in some ways it's nice to have another show in town as well. So anyway, there's layers to this.
Yeah, I'm probably more optimistic a little bit on Diggs than you might be on the target share stuff. You flagged the defensive schedule and the playoff regression, which I think are important points. The other point I would put that I think I've seen some people say is, he had all these great per route numbers, and now what if this year off the ACL he runs all the routes? And my contention would be then he probably will have worse per route numbers. I mean, that's the case for literally everyone in the NFL, I think, is that per route efficiency on partial route rolls is always inversely, or at least I should say on the aggregate is inversely correlated.
It's one of the biggest mistakes that people make, and especially for a guy like Diggs, who when you're limiting him, they were using him in spots where they wanted him to go win in specific spots, and he was like the first read. You're getting a really high rate of first reads and stuff. It's without question in my mind that if he ran full routes last year, his targets per out and his yards per out run would have been lower. He would have been running more complex concepts where he was just out there running empty routes. They took those off his plate. Anyway, continue.
Yeah, I mean that's pretty much what I was going to say. So
yeah. So to put some numbers to it, he ran the 419 routes in the regular season, 23.9% targets per route. In the 4 playoff games, 16.4%. I mean, that's way down. Which is not
playoffs, right? So I mean, you're getting him because they want to rely on him a bit more. So I think you're seeing that inverse correlation show up already. And I don't know what Washington's plan is. Like they had Deebo, who was kind of a similarly aging player that they didn't consistently use as a full-time player when Terry McLaurin was healthy. I mean, I think it would be wise of the Commanders probably to not use Diggs on like a 90% routes basis. We saw a similar thing with Keenan last year with the Chargers, had a really high targets per route run, but he had a pretty low route rate compared to that targets per route run, and it got lower throughout the course of the year. When we're dealing with older players, I just think it's logical coaching to say no, you're not playing 900 snaps at age 33. That's nonsense, especially if they're a team that has ambitions of trying to make the playoffs and trying to keep a guy like Diggs healthy to be helpful in that playoff push. So I do think someone else can get routes. Yeah.
Yeah. To piggyback on what you're saying and kind of pull it back into the long view thing, when I was trying to get people on Diggs last year, a lot of people were really out on him from the Texans situation the year prior, which again, that's 2 years back now, but
and an ACL
he was already
ago.
And an ACL ago, and he was fairly old at that point anyway. But that was a situation where he had more target competition. He was not the number one, and he was kind of running all of the routes. Now, he is good. The important point on Diggs, and the point I was making at the time as well, is his targets per out have been great every year, and they were good in that short stint with the Texans, 23.0%, solid 270 routes that he ran there. He had a 1.84 yards per out run. That's good. Behind Nico Collins, and he really kind of beat out Tank Dell that year. That's right before Tank Dell had his serious
I think if you're looking for
a
bull case for Diggs, and I mean, it's a lot to ask because it's 2 years later, but I think if you're looking for a bull case for Diggs this year, it's that he can repeat that 2024 Texans season.
And it's a better spot.
You have McLaurin kind of playing the role of the Nico Collins, taking on that X receiver role, the number one receiver responsibilities. Diggs gets to work off that in the slot. I mean, part of the fun with Diggs is like he always had a game that doesn't surprise me that he's aged pretty gracefully because he's so technically refined, has great hands, has a good feel for space. So like those are the things that I do think keep with you as you grow. That's why I think we've seen, Davante Adams has regressed, but is still very good. Keenan Allen has remained a productive player. And it's an archetype of player that can age better, but like Diggs hasn't really been a downfield guy since like 2021, 2022. I guess 2022 would be the last season he was a really effective downfield receiver. We saw that taper off in 2023 in Buffalo, and then it's just not really been a big part of his route diet the last couple of years. I think he'll be helpful. The guy that helps the most is Jayden Daniels because he was one 31-year-old receiver having another injury away from his number one receiver being like Traylon Burks.
Yeah.
And so like getting him another real weapon is a huge help. I think he's a huge target for me. And then I agree it's a downgrade for Chig, but it's not over. I still have some Chigakonkwo interest. It's too fragile, over 30 receivers above him. He's been drawing rave reviews. I view him like a little bit worse, but similarly to
tight
Juwan
ends.
Johnson.
You don't like tight ends like him.
I like tight ends like him if there's no one else who's credible who's going to block on the roster.
Oh, is Ben Sinnott not a good blocker? And John Bates?
I just don't know. I just don't know that like these guys are like guys.
Oh, I think they like those guys. They gave Bates like a real contract, and Sinnott actually very limited like routes and stuff, but was like an efficient receiver at times last year. I think they're deep at tight end. You don't think?
I mean, maybe we'll see. I've been pretty I'm less optimistic now. Before I felt like I didn't even care, like because I felt like Chig. I mean, all the reports on Chig were he's going to be their number 2 if they don't sign someone. And I felt like they were so thin at receiver that they were probably going to play a lot of 12.
That was my take on Chig too. So I think
I think it is a meaningful downgrade, but I still don't think that they have another tight end on the roster who gives them like an all-around Y profile. Like Bates is purely a blocker. And I don't know. Is with Diggs and McLaurin, is that good enough to say we're just good playing a pure blocking tight end? I don't know what to make of Sinnott. He's barely played. Like maybe
I don't think those guys are going to play over Okonkwo. I just think that Okonkwo's routes were probably going to be somewhat limited by those guys being on the roster and then just doing some different sub packages at times. And the case for him was going to be a really high targets per out, like the Dalton Kincaid case from last year, like really high targets per out, and you hit on a lot of efficiency, and you're the clear number 2, and like it's pretty spread, but you separate from
different. The case I was making for Okonkwo, I don't know why. I guess it's kind of a pointless argument now because the case has changed dramatically, I think, with Diggs. But the case I was making for Okonkwo previously was you look at Juwan Johnson last year as a guy who previously used to be a partial route to tight end, and I felt like they had such a dire need for playmaking that they were basically like, we're willing to live with slightly inferior blocking because we really need to play someone at the tight end position that can get us receiving value because we don't have it anywhere else outside of Chris Olave on this roster, right? Their wide receiver 2 is like Devon Vele. So I thought we would get a situation with Okonkwo where they're going to play a lot of 12 to get him on the field in the slot. And I thought he was going to play a career high amount of snaps at 11 because I just felt like they needed playmakers so badly that they were going to have to find it with him. That I think has scaled down a little bit, but I don't know where would you rank him? I still prefer him.
That's not
in the strange Juwan range for me.
That's not crazy far off of what I'm thinking either, just to be clear. But yeah, I have him right behind Juwan. You kind of said behind Juwan. I have him right behind Juwan as well. I think Juwan's an easier bet because we saw it last year. We saw all the routes. We saw him. He was 3rd in the league at tight end in receiving yardage. Chig, I moved down a little bit, but only to tight end 18. So, I mean, he's still whatever. I mean, I just don't think I would. I kind of had him as a target, and I don't think I would care.
I did have him. Point. I did have him as a pretty big target with the caveat that I'm not that surprised that they signed someone. But yeah, I had him as a target and like was prepared to make him a bit of a turbo target if they actually didn't end up signing Stefon Diggs.
2 last things I want to circle back on that you said. The Daniels point, completely agree with. I mentioned this in my projection write-up. I'm bullish on Daniels. It made me a lot more optimistic about... I'm about to sneeze, but I think it's going away. It made me a lot more optimistic. I thought it was about to come. It made me a lot more optimistic that my bullish projection on him had a higher floor, basically, right? Like, and that's the way that you described it. I didn't necessarily get a lot higher of a projection for anyone who was curious because I reprojected the whole offense, but that was in part because I was already fairly bullish on Daniels, and it felt a little bit fragile. It feels a lot safer at this point. Diggs was still a very efficient receiver last year, and both of the last 2 years with the Texans and the Patriots had a really high catch rate. Both years has been a quarterback's friend the last couple years. The other note I wanted to make, because you said that the bull case was sort of what happened with the Texans 2 years ago. There were a lot of people that didn't like the stuff with the Texans, that his ADOT came way down, etc. And there's so many people looking at the Patriots thing as so favorable with the really high per route stuff, even at a limited number of routes, that I do want to emphasize part of the point that I think we're both making, I'm certainly making, about the Patriots' role last year with the limited route stuff, and that there would have been empty routes if he would have been out there more, is that in some ways you're just talking about the raw numbers. I mean, in every way that actually matters for fantasy football is we're talking about catches and yards. While he was with Houston in 8 games, including the game that he left early with an injury, he averaged 5.9 receptions per game and 62 yards per game. While he was with the Patriots last year, just in the regular season when he was actually doing very well, he averaged 5.0 receptions per game. That's about a full reception per game less, 59.6. He was more efficient per target, closer in yards per game, just 2.4 yards per game less. A lot more yards per reception, which was nice to see that he had a little bit more burst coming back and all those things. But in terms of per game averages, I bet a lot of our listeners would not guess that he was better with Houston than he was with the Patriots.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's a combination of the per route stuff. I think it's also just people remember that was the year there was a lot of discussion about which Houston receiver would be the one, and it was like an open 3-way conversation, and then it resolved like so immediately and so decisively to be Nico Collins, and people are obsessed with who is the one and who is not. And so I think people remember Diggs being not the one, and then last year he was the one. So surely it's better to be the one.
It's a good point. It's a good point, but and then driving home more that's more sort of narrative driven. The one role he was in last year, very meaningful, and it was good that he played really well. I still think Stefon Diggs is very, very good, and I still think you can draft him. But in terms of what his actual upside is for this year, you do have to understand the last couple of years, the stats have fallen down, have fallen off. There are some limitations. He is 33. Anyway, what is our next short view?
We're 32 minutes in.
Yeah, but we were going to talk about Diggs for a long time for sure.
That's the biggest one. Did you have anything on Deebo?
Yeah, you also mentioned Deebo. I don't have a lot on him. I think he's bad for Stribling because Stribling was a ball-in-hand guy. Deebo's a ball-in-hand guy. I think there's more overlap there than there was with Stribling and Pearsall. That's my main take. It hurts the Stribling case. We talked about Stribling.
Who would you rather draft? Deebo or Stribling?
Oh. I sort of don't want to draft either, but probably Stribling.
Yeah, I think I had it. I hope my rankings reflect this because I gave this take, but I'll double check my rankings now to make sure. I think in a redraft format, I'd rather do Stribling. In a best ball format, I'd probably rather do Deebo.
Oh, I think I would flip that. Because I think Deebo's going to get a lot of early volume, but probably break down. Right. And Stribling's sort of a late season hammer. And I think in best ball, those late season hammers. I think if I draft Stribling in redraft, I'll probably end up cutting him.
More about interesting. I guess my attitude on it is like I don't think Deebo. I think he's really limited at this point physically, and I think he's probably going to be somewhat route limited to cater to those physical limitations. Like they've been talking about using him on special teams. So I don't think it's that possible for him to be like a massive hit to the degree.
Talking about using him on special teams doesn't sound like limiting him. It sounds like they think he's
like
25.
I interpreted that the other way. I think like if a big part of their plan for him is to use him as like a punt returner, kick returner, that doesn't sound like they're also going to use him on 100% of the routes. Like I feel like they're going to use him a little bit more situationally, but we'll see. I mean, maybe.
I mean, maybe they will. I mean, that's an interesting interpretation too. Maybe they will. But for me with Deebo, it's like if in a managed league, if I did end up drafting him late or something, I get a free peek at what the role is, and maybe he actually has. Because we're gonna get more information early in the season on him than Stribling probably now.
I mean, I still think Stribling's going to start for them, right? I think that's probably their 3 wide receiver set: is Evan, Stribling, Deebo.
Okay.
So. And I think it's so. I don't think it'll be a huge shift. Like I think Stribling, I think it's still arrow up big time on Stribling versus what it was with Pearsall because I think now. I think Stribling. I don't think Stribling was going to play in 2 wide receiver sets over Pearsall. I do think he plays in 2 wide receiver sets over Deebo.
Okay.
And for me, if I'm doing a redraft, I agree. Neither of them are massive redraft targets, but I just think if one of these guys is going to be the big hit, I probably would just draft the younger player. I don't think Deebo really has big hit in his range of outcomes, but like best ball where I'm really floor focused. I mean, Stribling could be like Jalen Polk, right? He could just be a literal nothing. Whereas Deebo, I think we're leaving here with something. So late round wide receiver, like if Deebo gets me a few spike weeks early in the season, helps me advance, like he's done his job.
Yeah, I feel like I would rather have that exact thing you just said in manage because I may actually start him while he's running good, and then if he gets hurt or whatever or fades, then I just cut him and move on. In best ball, you don't want those zeros in the money weeks. If he only gets you a few spike weeks early, like. Yeah, maybe that's an okay advance rate player, but it's not that great for best ball. You want guys that are scoring in 15, 16, 17, right?
I mean, you do, but you got to me, it's just more of a floor-based game. Like you just don't want guys who are not contributing at any point in the season. And like Stribling, I think has has a risk of being like effectively a non-factor.
Yeah, this is actually a really interesting discussion because I hear that point too. All right, let's move to the rest of the short view.
All right, so we got a bunch more. I'm now gonna move to part 2, which is injury news. Right. So this will cover both new injuries and returns from injury. So we've got the San Francisco substation is just continuing to deal out blows. Mike Evans has missed time with a mild hamstring strain. Doesn't sound like it's anything to be worried about for week 1. Dejon Stribling missed about a week with hamstring tightness, but I just saw he was back today. Kalen Black has been missing time. Jordan James is still out. Christian Kirk is still out. It's crazy what's going on in San Francisco. Kenyon Sadiq, this one I think is probably the most worrying one on my list, in my opinion at least. He suffered a setback from recovery from an offseason hernia surgery. It's expected to cost him at least a couple weeks. They do expect him to be back for week 1. Chris Rodriguez, positive injury news. He is now back fully integrated at practice. He's operating in team drills as well. And they had mentioned that they were using him on situational stuff where they were backed up at their own one. Your boy John Shipley is predicting him to be the goal line running back after he's drawn positive reviews in his return. We're back to bad injury news. Devonta Smith, Mekhi Lemon are each dealing with mild hamstring strains at Eagles camp. Jalen McMillan has a knee injury, and in classic Todd Bowles fashion, he said there's no timetable for return, and that was later clarified to be like he'll probably be back in a couple days.
He's fine. It's not a ligament injury. He got a bump on his knee, for the record.
Yeah, it was just like Todd Bowles. I mean, this is the same guy who said Bucky Irving would be back sometime in the summer or fall, but he goes out and says knee injury, no timetable to return, which like makes me think he tore his ACL.
Yeah.
Yeah, and then later it's like, oh, he probably has a bruised knee.
Maybe say the timetable. Maybe say in the next couple weeks.
Right.
There's clearly a timetable. He just bumped his knee. It's a short timetable.
It's insane. I mean, imagine Todd Bowles like being the producer of this podcast, and he'd be like, "Oh, how long is the short view going to take this week?" There's no timetable.
There's no timetable for that.
Oh man, Jalen Waddle had originally was reported as muscle tightness. Now it's being reported as a mild strain. And Sean Payton said he would miss 4 to 5 days, so I guess not a huge concern, but he was spotted limping at practice today. And then Josh Jacobs was not in pads, is working with the rehab trainer today. That's later been called a groin injury. If you recall, that's what Jacobs dealt with through the whole second half of last season was a groin injury. So a bit of a re-injury perhaps there. And Marshawn Lloyd just continues to draw absolute rave reviews. Seems like every single practice there's a news hit about a really impressive play that Marshawn Lloyd made. So that's the injury stuff. What sticks out top of the list for you?
Well, Lloyd's profile is incredibly strong coming out of college. He's been hurt a bunch. People are going to be sick of it. I think he's one of the best late-round running back options you can find. He should be screaming up your board. Because, I mean, the Jacob stuff all last year, Emmanuel Wilson got multiple starts as a result.
Yeah. As a result of this injury.
this injury. Sean Siegel just did a really good injury deep dive over at RotoViz that I really enjoyed. It's using AI to do some deep injury research. One of the things that he found was like last year, injuries are the thing that's not priced in the most are like nagging injuries the year prior. Like season-ending injuries get priced in. Like Nabers was getting pushed down far enough, right? He did this before the Pearsall thing, but I was like, man, the Pearsall thing's a great example of one of the things that can happen. You don't get surgery. It's supposed to heal naturally. It doesn't. Well, crap. The Jacobs thing, man, he had this groin injury last year. This guy's had a lot of work over the years. Obviously not fully healthy over the course of an offseason. And you start to think about how this could play into... This guy's had 260 touches, I think it is, all 7 years of his career. Does he get 260 touches this year? I mean, I'm taking the under on that right now. And if Lloyd
he might be suspended. That's still ongoing.
That's the other thing going on. Lloyd's the only show in town behind him. We talked about Chris Brooks and we talked about the running backs, but I mean, when I did the projections for these guys, I was like, one of these backup running backs should be getting drafted. Looked into the Brooks thing a little more and was like, well, Brooks isn't the profile. So I said, like, yeah, Lloyd's a thing. I mean, for anyone who listened to the ETE pod or read the off-season stealing signal series I was writing up, like I was like, look, Lloyd is a thing. You got the injury concerns with him. Well, now it's like it's neon lights that he's a thing. It's very, very clear. People are still going to be a little concerned from an injury perspective, but I've seen some of the social media posts that people are like, man, like everyone's overstating how great Marshawn Lloyd looks. Like there's a reason that you've heard that name Marshawn Lloyd as a sleeper the last couple of years. Like his prospect.
Yeah, he's a real prospect.
He
was
really
legitimately
strong.
Interesting. He was a bit of a boom bust prospect, but like. Hey man, if you're going in the 180s, I don't give a crap about the bust.
Huge breakaway run rate. Yeah, huge breakaway run rate, huge evasion rate. This is a guy who makes it's like Ken Walker. Like it's. I was comparing him to some other dudes. Like he has a better missed tackles forced per touch rate and better breakaway run rate than Jeremiah Love. Like Jeremiah Love has more overall work. He has more yards after contact. He has a better receiving profile. He's a better overall back. But like that's the kind of thing that Marshawn Lloyd's profile is like. It's an elite tackle breaking and explosive run profile. There should be no shock that he's flashing in camp. That everyone's saying he looks fast. There should be no shock.
Yeah, I mean, the reason why I say it's boom bust is if people are like listening and haven't paid attention to the 2024 running back class in a while is just he didn't get a ton of work in college, wasn't a ton of receiving volume in college, had fumbling issues in college. So generally it was like, this guy is super talented. Ben mentioned all the great sort of like per touch stats that he had, which were really positive. And then it's just, is this a guy that can be relied upon? Can he be relied upon to hold onto the ball? Can he be relied upon to stay healthy? Can he be relied upon to keep those per touch rates up if he gets more volume? And all that stuff are very legitimate concerns. Like Trey Benson had kind of a similar profile, and it hasn't.
I was thinking of him. Yeah,
it obviously hasn't panned out for Lloyd yet for 2 years, but like this is a chance to get in on a existing really strong talent, and it's encouraging to hear how good he looks at camp, because part of the concern with a guy like Lloyd is like, when you haven't really played football for 2 years, like is that impressive stuff still there, or has it just gone? Pretty great to hear that it's still there, healthy now, and that he's looking great. So yeah, I think he's a massive priority.
Great call. Yeah, well said. I would just echo that point that you made, that for all the positive I was saying, he's a really good late round target while he's cheap. Totally. He's not necessarily someone, because of some of those reliability concerns that were even there in the prospect profile, someone to chase way, way, way up. But like if you're in home leagues and stuff, this is the kind of guy you take at the back of your running back room in a home league draft in round 14 or whatever, because they're not going to he's not going to go that high.
I mean, I think he is a straight up better pick to me than like Woody Marks and Tyrone Tracy. You go like 40 picks ahead of them.
It's a way better pick in managed. Yeah. I mean, I think definitely than Woody Marks. Woody Marks has no efficiency upside. Even if he gets the work, like what are you going to get out of Woody Marks? Anyway,
nothing.
C-Rod back at practice. You talked about the John Shipley thing. I want to talk about that because I mentioned the Shipley thing, and I was like, the whole reason I brought it up was like,
welcome to Shipley chasing.
The Tank Bigsby thing was so tilting last year, all the hype, et cetera, but I want to believe it this time about
By the way,
Tank
Bigsby is just like the greatest preseason player of all time, I'm pretty sure. I think certain guys live for training camp, because Tank Bigsby is also getting constant training camp hype. This year, he got constant training camp hype his rookie year, even when he was terrible. Like Tank Bigsby in August is Jim Brown.
This is the Tank Bigsby year to be in on.
Yeah, I'm in on Bigsby.
Just a sec. I'm moving Marshawn Lloyd up my rankings right now. I need a second. Because I have Bigsby up my ranks, and I realize, you know what, Lloyd needs to be up there ahead of Bigsby even. But both these guys those are my two favorite sort of late round running backs still. They're both rising. I don't think they're going to be late round running backs for long and competitive stuff. But C-Rod, the whole Shipley thing was that I was saying all that stuff about Bigsby, and then I was like, but I want to believe it this time on Bashal Tuten. There was this idea that C-Rod might not be fully healthy for week one. That came out. So I released my running back tiers the other day, and I had Tuten pretty aggressively priced. I talked about how this whole running back dead zone's a really hard range to rank. It's just a big tier, and you're kind of more profile chasing in the running back dead zone. There's guys that are clear dead zone profiles that you want to be out on, in my opinion at least. And then younger players like Tuten could be guys that you'd be in on. And so it's like, how do you really rank them? I'm not trying to say that I'm super into Tuten, but I'm going to put him ahead of the guys that I think are like clear fades. And so I had Tuten, at the top of that tier. Actually, we had talked recently about that group, and I had picked Jadarian Price at cost as the best, but I was starting to think Tuten was going to be the one that was going to be the best at cost. Released that article, like the next day, it's like Chris Rodriguez is back in practice, and they're splitting work 50-50, and looks great, and it's like Bashal Tuten's in a complete timeshare, and I'm like, reverse Bashal Tuten. Like, this is the type of situation we should be paying attention to in camp, and quick to adjust our rankings on, in my opinion. And so I moved Tuten back quite a bit. I moved Rodriguez up a little bit as a result of this. I still like Tuten quite a bit more. I have him quite a bit higher in my running back ranks, but that's kind of how I'm looking at it. What are you thinking? Just foiled by Shipley again. Foiled by Shipley and optimism again.
Well, I put out a tweet yesterday, which I think is so going to be what happens, which is so annoying as a person that's pretty interested in playing the Jacksonville backfield, which is that Tuten has gotten only positive reporting. And now Rodriguez has gotten really positive reporting. But I just think that a lot of the people who are drafting Tuten and a lot of the people who are drafting Rodriguez are living in their own worlds and they're not interacting with each other. So I think that the end result of this is Tuten goes up around and Rodriguez goes up around. The Rodriguez people are so excited and the Tuten people are so excited. And then you get back and it's like, wait, why did this backfield get 3 rounds more expensive?
Because John Shipley is all about optimism. It's the Shipley effect. That's exactly what it is, Jacob.
2 Shipleys they're not passing in the night. 2 Shipleys are just going full speed ahead.
Optimistic. He's going to tell you really good things, and you're going to talk about it on your podcast, and you're going to aggregate the heck out of it, and we're going to give John Shipley all of the name value. I mean, I love the guy.
He's a great guy. He's even DM'd me a few times. Yeah. I like John Shipley a lot.
He knows the game.
He's oh yeah, smart dude. And he knows fantasy stuff. But is he the most he's got to be the most discussed beat writer on fantasy podcasts.
That's my point. And that's been my whole point with him is he knows how his bread is buttered. He knows how to get in front of us. He knows how to get on this podcast. We're not talking about any other beat reporter by name. John Shipley is the GOAT.
Just wait a second. I got another beat reporter.
Okay. With the other names you mentioned, I'm not going to talk about Waddle. That's just typical for him. Kenyon Sadiq.
Yeah, if anything, it's a positive. Get injured now; it'll save you from getting injured later.
You're very into Waddle. I'm a little concerned about Waddle's reliability. I'm moving him into a range where I probably won't draft him a ton. Not necessarily down. I am moving Sadiq down, especially as you say this is the one that you're most concerned about. So let's talk about that a little bit more because he's been a really good price as a mid first round pick, legit profile. Going way late for reasons that are hard to understand when he broke the combine record for 40 time for a tight end, and he's a first-round pick. I mean, they're going to want to use him when healthy. I am a little concerned that Mason Taylor led this team in targets and receptions last year, was a legitimate, decent day 2 rookie. And there could be some routes issues there. Obviously, I think when you go and you get Sadiq as as the new guy in the first round, you're going to use him quite a lot. But if he's hurt right now in camp, you're talking about maybe a slower ramp up for the routes in season. You do have a capable other young tight end that you can use early in the year. So
and you have 3 capable receivers, so there's not like a need to be in 12 all the time.
Where I moved him. How far down are you moving Gadsden to? We're probably going to get to Gadsden, but
we're going to get to Gadsden. We are going to get to Gadsden. He's on the list, and that's the other beat reporter because we're going.
All right, we'll talk about Sadiq when we. Daniel Popper.
Let's just talk about him. Let's talk about them both because we're on the tight end. So Sadiq and Gadsden. I moved down. I moved Gadsden down further. I guess maybe I should say why we're moving Gadsden down. So that is a Daniel Popper report that had. Let me find it here. There we go. Oronde Gadsden has been running as the tight end 3 in camp thus far. Per Daniel Popper, Charlie Kolar is a quote, very clearly tight end 1, while Njoku and Gadsden will be rotating in as the tight end 2, depending on situation. Much of that's owing to Gadsden's run blocking, is what Popper was saying. But, run blocking doesn't matter for tight ends.
You loved saying that. That was your favorite moment.
The annoying thing is I've actually drafted Gadsden, so I take no pleasure from it. But I do love to bring up tight end run blocking on this program.
I mean, certainly the camp news for the first 2 weeks of camp and the fact that the run blocking tight end has been out on the field more so that their offense can function as they establish other things is the only thing that matters. We should just victory lap everything about fantasy.
All right. Well, I'm not going to go that far, but I mean it. So I don't actually care that much about the. Who do we want to talk about first, Gadsden or Sadiq? They're both moving. They're 2 young tight ends moving down.
Well, I was going to ask you Sadiq versus Okonkwo and Gadsden and Juwan Johnson. I have all those guys sort of in the same range.
So
where do you
I had
rank
Sadiq.
them?
I had Sadiq in this. I mean, actually, what's interesting is that this used to be a range of tight end that I loved. And it's getting like clobbered on a day-to-day basis. Like that whole range of Juwan, Strange, Okonkwo, Gadsden, Sadiq, Schultz, Hunter Henry. I liked a lot of those guys, and I like drafting multiple tight ends in that range, like on FFPC especially. So it hurts to see a lot of those profiles take a hit with the Diggs signing, the Sadiq injury, and then some of this Gadsden news. But I've moved I've moved Gadsden down. Like I would just rather have Terrence Ferguson.
Straight up. I mean, I really like the Ferguson play, but that's maybe fair. Part of the reason I would still be in on Gadsden would be to say, I think he's going to pop up. He's going to have some spike weeks. I think he's a better best ball play now because I think it's kind of absurd to think that a year 2 tight end with his prospect profile, which was very strong in his first season, is just going to not play. I mean, I think that's
seen this
people.
Before. Remember the Albert O, the Greg.
There is weird stuff. Oh, it's not Albert O. There is weird stuff that happens at tight end, but Albert O's situation quite different. Albert O didn't have games like
he never popped.
Gadsden had.
He never popped to the degree Gadsden did. I agree, but it's like my main point is the tight end is weird. Like just generally as a position, tight end is weird, and different coaches seem to have very different preferences for what they want out of their tight end, and it's a position where, and Gadsden is kind of weird. Like he's a very unique player. He's a converted wide receiver, becomes a tight end, really, really thrived last year, has like very clear strengths. But they go in, they add Kolar, they add Njoku, and then you get a new coaching staff coming in with different priorities. Like it's concerning. And I was optimistic on Gadsden this year. I've moved him down. I hope that the market is going to move him down a lot so that I can get him really cheap because I'm not like giving up all hope for this profile by any stretch. But I do think like, if you're drafting if you're drafting a best ball draft and you want you've taken Brock Bowers and you just want a tight end 2, like you that tight end 2 better fulfill the role of like giving me a playable floor in case Brock Bowers turns an ankle for 2 weeks. And like Dalton Schultz is going to fulfill that role to me better now than an Oronde Gadsden that I have no clue what he's going to do. If I'm drafting a main event team and I just need to start one tight end and I'm taking shots on 4 different profiles and I need one to pop, I'm still have interest in Oronde Gadsden in that range where I just need to take shots on multiple guys and then pick one.
So for people who don't know what he's talking about, in FFPC, it's tight end premium and there are 2 flexes. You can play up to 3 tight ends. And so, like, we had Harold Fannin on all the teams last year. I did on all mine with Siegel, and I think you and I had him together. And so you in that format, because when the late round tight ends profiles do hit, it's easy to jam them into one of the flex spots because you have 2 flexes. You could start to 3 tight ends, and with the tight end premium, it makes them very viable. I completely agree. Gadsden, Sadiq,
and there's this
those
idea
profiles
of cranking purple, which is like what we used to talk about with Crack Rock on Chip Chase.
Yeah.
If you miss out on the early tight ends.
People who don't know what Crack Rock means are curious what you're talking about at this point, but that's a screen name.
Yeah, anyway.
We have a new podcast, Jacob. The ship chasing lore might not be lined up for everybody. Crack Rock is
Crack Rock is a former and current guest of ship chasing once per year who comes on, and he coined the term cranking purple, which
amazing
purple is the color that tight ends are on FFPC. Anyway, the idea is because it's tight end premium, tight ends have value, but if you miss out on the early guys, that mid-range of tight ends tends to get really priced up. So if you're playing on FFPC, a pretty viable strategy is to just wait on tight end and then draft like a ton of different profiles at the end of your draft and kind of see which one sticks. So, you might draft like one stable guy as like a Schultz, but then you take a Terrence Ferguson and an Aronde Gadsden and a Kenyon Sadiq and Eli Stowers. And then, hopefully you find one sustainable starter. My point is in that format where you're kind of really looking at, okay, what if I need one of these guys to pop? Gadsden and Sadiq pop a lot for me in that mindset. The floor just got really scary, like legitimately scary. And in a best ball format where I need that floor, I'm going to look other directions until he falls way down the board. But I hope he does because I want to be in on Gadsden. Sadiq, I'm not moving down as much.
So
I think.
Can I comment on Gadsden before we move to Sadiq?
Come on in.
I think, so early in the offseason, coming off a rookie year where he had a bunch of strong games, he was like the tight end 8 in early, like pre-draft best ball. He's already going like tight end 18, 19. And so when you're talking about falling way down the board, you're talking about going meaningfully further than that. Ferguson's going like tight end 27. Just for some reference points for people that aren't drafting a massive amount. My take on him at tight end 18, 19 is a lot of this FUD about his role was already baked in. And as far as best ball is concerned, I actually think, you don't get hurt by zeros. You just talked a minute ago about with Deebo just getting a few usable weeks. Like Gadsden being out there and catching a few touchdowns, I still think he has the clear best receiving profile here. And Njoku's stuff has dropped off. His targets per out run were terrible last year. Kolar has 40 career targets or something. Like his career high is like less than 20 catches. I
agree with you, but they might not give a shit.
They might not. They might
just be disinterested in receiving at tight end.
The point is that may not be the only option. That might not be the only outcome. That's what everyone thinks right now. That's what everyone is saying. Coach Big Index has got all these quotes on Kolar and is hammering it. It's all over the news. And Coach Big Index does incredible work. I'm not coming at him. But it's all over everywhere, the Charlie Kolar stuff. What about the fact that when Darren Waller got healthy last year, Mike McDaniel had a role for him from day one for an athletic tight end down the field with some actual ADOT, different than the stuff he did with Jonnu Smith the year prior that was all quick hit stuff. I didn't think there would be a role for Darren Waller. Mike McDaniel had something schemed up for him, and that's exactly what Aronde Gadsden's profile looks like. You mentioned the Okwegbanom thing, and I know that you weren't making a huge point, but I pulled this up and I wanted to circle back to it. Okwegbanom had fewer receiving yards in his entire career than Gadsden had last year. He had 2 career games over 60 receiving yards. Gadsden had 5 last year alone. He had 164 yards against your Colts. He had some really legit games. He had a 4-game stretch where he hit 68 yards plus 4 straight games, 5 plus catches, 4 straight games. It did fall off a little late. There are concerns here, but this idea that a year 2 tight end that did what he did, 664 yards as a rookie, had some real meaningful production, would be like a tight end 18 or 19, which he is right now, is already, I think, a value proposition on some of these concerns. I agree with you, the floor just got a lot lower, and I agree with you that weird stuff happens in tight end. I think the whole market right now thinks that's the only thing that can happen, though. And I'm just trying to emphasize that, like, a scenario where he's in and out of the lineup a little bit, he has some good games, injuries open some things up for him, he emerges again later in the season, which we've seen with late-round players, that it takes, like we talked about this with Jacoby Myers, I think, where late-round players have to break out twice. It happened with Jalen Coker a little bit. Gadsden's good at the game. I genuinely believe that. I think you believe that too. Maybe they won't have a role for him. Maybe that's not the plan week 1, and they end up having a role for him. Maybe they have a role for him in week 1. There's a lot of different things here that I think are not. Will.
Even the Popper report is like, it's bearish, but I do think that it's not like Popper's saying Gadsden's going to be a healthy scratch or something like that. What they're saying is that Kolar is going to be tight end 1. And what I really think that he means by tight end 1 is he's going to be the Y tight end on early down 11 personnel sets, meaning when they're in run situations, Kolar is going to be the Y tight end. And obviously they'll sometimes pass out of those situations. And then he's saying, the tight end 2, he's saying in 12 personnel, it's going to be sometimes Njoku if they want to do some stuff close to the line of scrimmage, and it'll be Gadsden if they want to try and use a more of a vertical element. So, that's bad. I think the one thing he didn't address.
But even when you said early down 11 personnel, let me just dive into that because that's not a huge thing. What about 2 minute drill?
Okay. Well, that was the next thing I was going to say is what he did not say in his piece, and what my follow-up question would be is who is the Y tight end in passing situations? Because maybe it's Kolar.
Or even really because there's a lot of those early downs in 2 minute drill, early downs when you're trailing in the second half, right?
Yeah. So so when we're talking about the Y tight end, it really is 2 different roles. There's a Y. So this is like a Jared Cook is a guy that comes to mind. There's a lot of different tight ends that come to mind. He was a guy who played in 12, and he would play as the Y tight end in 11 if it was third down, if it was the 2 minute drill, or if the team was trailing in the second half and they were passing, which that's a lot of plays.
Yeah.
And
Eric Ebron too, right?
Right. And because there's a ton of guys. Kobe Fleener was like this. The Goodyear Greg Dulcich Chatty was like this. There's a bunch of guys that are like this, and it's usually
was Evan Ingram like that?
They just played Evan Ingram in Jacksonville.
They just played him all the time.
They just played him and dealt with it. Yeah. But they had Jawan Johnson's been like this in the past. Not last year. They played him every snap. But in previous years, he was like this. And you can get a 60 to 70. You can get a 60 to 80% route rate kind of depending on the flow of the game. There's going to be certain games where you're throwing a lot, and there's going to be certain games where you're not. And so there's variation to it. But you can have big route spikes. The issue, so to me, the Kolar thing isn't actually the issue. There's a lot of focus on Kolar in the fantasy community. I do think he's a completely viable 18th round best ball tight end. But if we're talking about actual value,
that's not the Kolar crazy to me. You think Kolar's a legit 18th round pick, and you want Gadsden to fall even further than his 14th round ADP. For the listeners, Charlie Kolar's career high is 10 receptions in a season.
Yeah, but he has a real college profile.
Okay, but he's been playing for the Ravens. He's actually gotten on the field in 3 tight end situations.
But he's been on the field with a specific blocking role. And the Chargers keep talking about how they want to use him more as a receiver, and he's their my point on
he was really efficient as a receiver there. When I say it's crazy, I don't think you're certainly wrong. It's shocking to me that we're extrapolating to this degree. Because he has been really, really efficient to just emphasize that point. His career at 10 yards per target, which is really good for tight end.
Let's talk about his college profile, right? So he has 3 seasons of more than 40 receptions and more than 590 receiving yards at Iowa State. That's a real college receiving profile.
Okay,
so
but
it's not
4 years in the NFL where he didn't do any of that.
Right, but in a specific blocking role next to Isaiah Likely and Mark Andrews.
Isn't he next to? A declining Mark Andrews and an often hurt Isaiah Likely.
My point is not that I'm not drafting Kolar ahead of Gadsden, but tight end is my fundamental assumption about tight end is that it is both weird and is heavily influenced by coaching preferences. And it is a position where if a coach wants to tell me over and over again, the beat writers want to tell me over and over again, this guy's a tight end 1. We think he has way better receiving upside than he ever got a chance to show in Baltimore. We want to use him a lot as a receiver. I don't really believe it, but I believe it enough to click him every once in a while in round 18. That's who else am I going to take in round 18? Darnell Washington? That's the type of names we're going against, right? It's
Michael Mayer, that's fine. I'm sold. I didn't realize how good his college profile was. I was genuinely pushing back on that out of ignorance, I'll say, and I think you've explained that well.
But anyway, Kolar.
It just seems crazy because, again, the The 10 receptions over 4 seasons as a career high.
This has been like, maybe it's a frog in boiling water, but like I was where you're at now, like a month ago, and like I feel like I've steadily gotten my head around it a little bit more, but like it is still alarming. I agree, and I think the immediate outcome is that Kalar is gonna have like 20 catches this year.
Yeah, because that's a clear possible outcome. And Gadsden, meanwhile, had like legit games, like multiple times as a rookie, a late round rookie, like on a crowded team. Everyone makes excuses for Ladd that like Keenan Allen was stealing targets for him, and everyone makes excuses for QJ. This was a crowded room. What about the fact that Oronde Gadsden, as a day 3 tight end, stepped into that room and had the stretch that he had? Like, he was really, really productive for a while. Yes, he lost work after that and wasn't productive down the stretch. There's concerns with Gadsden too, but that's why I say it's crazy to me that Gadsden's already going like tight end 19, and you're like, I need him to fall further, but also I'll draft Kolar, and maybe that's right. I
think
tight end's weird. Tight end's weird.
All 3 of them are draftable late round tight ends in best ball. I think Gadsden is the only profile that I'd have interest in as a redraft option, but I do think, like, so comparing to Ferguson's another guy who projects to be somewhat rotational, but like, and obviously does not have the profile from last year, but he does have way higher draft capital. He had a pretty strong college profile, and like, to me, it's like, I don't know, do I want to bet on the tight end who is going to have rotational issues, but the team can't stop talking about how much they love him and they want to dream up plays for him, or the guy who's running and all of his routes with DJ Uiagalelei at camp? Like, I just want to take Terrence Ferguson. Like, I just feel like there's fewer obstacles.
Was that the Clemson guy that transferred to UCLA?
Yeah,
or whatever?
that's the 3rd-team quarterback that Gadsden, and I got his pronunciation right on the first try. So that was
my God, I have no idea how to say that. That is impressive.
Uiagalelei.
Okay.
I Sewarded on ship chasing the other day, and then I practiced in a mirror. I'm kidding, I didn't, but I.
That's who Gadsden's playing with. I don't even know how to say his name. Great, perfect, awesome.
So anyway, I think that there's still outs for Oronde Gadsden. What I was trying to say is that the Kolar thing is less annoying to me for Gadsden, because I already viewed Gadsden's likely ceiling role as not being like the quote unquote inline tight end on early downs. And I didn't really care, especially at his price. I was like, if he can be in 12 and in 13, and he can be the primary pass catching tight end on 3rd downs and 2-minute and comeback mode, I can get like a 70% route rate out of that potentially. That's more than good enough for me, especially at his price. I think he could be a smash. The concern for me with Gadsden is less Kolar. It's Njoku being ahead of him is concerning, and something I did not expect. Doesn't have to stick forever, but it's concerning. And then the other part that's concerning is that the receivers like just keep drawing really, really strong reviews. They're loving Trey Harris. They're talking about all the ways that they want to use QJ. They're talking about Ladd really favorite. Brennan Thompson, my guy Brennan Thompson, has been like the talk of camp. So, you know,
this is why I can't take Brenton Strange. I think Brenton Strange is like basically in manage. It's so hard to draft him because you got 3 really good receivers for Jacksonville, and then if any of them get hurt, they're just going to use Hunter more. And they're already talking about like using Hunter more than people realize.
But at least Strange is going to be on the field.
Right. Fair. I mean,
so like part of the path to Gadsden being on the field a lot was I was like, I'm not that sold on this receiver room. Maybe they play a lot of 12, but if they love their receivers and they want to run their passing game through the receivers, like, this may not be how we would do it, but there is a logic to saying, if you're Mike McDaniel and you love their receivers, maybe he just looks at it and says, well, I want to run this passing game through the running backs and through Ladd and QJ and Harris. And so all I want from my tight end is run blocking. I'm not going to throw them anyway.
I think that's a possibility, but my point is that's what everyone thinks right now. Everyone thinks that's all that can happen.
That's not what everyone thinks right now. He's going ahead of Dalton Schultz, who's going to get 90 targets.
Dude, he was going tight end 8 and he's going tight end 20 now. Like, he fell all the way.
Tight end 8 was a bad price. I mean, and that's before they even signed David Njoku. So like, things changed meaningfully.
Okay, I mean, that part of it I'll accept, but I don't know why the tight end 8 would be a bad price in a year where, to me, there's like no good profiles after about tight end 6, and like, he's a year 2 player who had a legit rookie year that we should be building off of. Like, I mean, the Brenton Strange thing's like, this is a guy we've seen limitations to over multiple years. But I mean, again,
I think it's a massive disconnect between a redraft format and a best ball format, where I get that, like, if you're playing in a home league, especially, Brenton Strange is meaningless to you because he's going to have probably the same value as whatever you can stream off the waiver wire. If you're playing in a best ball format, in my opinion, the opportunity cost of foregoing a Strange or Schultz, who has a locked in role, or Hawkinson,
Yes, probably
for Gadsden is very real. Like
I just want you to tell me
Gadsden has 11 targets this year.
That just doesn't seem likely. How likely is that? That everyone else stays healthy?
Not that
even
likely.
And Joku's gonna stay healthy and like. What's the situation there for Kolar? He gets like 50. Oh, they just don't use the tight ends in your mind in that situation?
Well, I think that this offense is like a million moving plates, but like the situation in which they're actually committed to playing Charlie Kolar 75% of the snaps. Again, that's just one slice of the range of outcomes. I'm not saying that's what's going to happen, but I'm saying if like we're going to play this game later today, imagine. And like this isn't even something we can look up in the parameters of our game, but imagine we change the rules and I'm like, I want to see Charlie Kolar's snap rate. And if someone came to me and they were like, Charlie Kolar is playing 77% of LA's snaps, I'm like, well then throttle down the tight end target share and I want to draft more of Ladd McConkey and the running backs and Quinn Johnston and Trey Harris. That would be my conclusion. That
does seem possible. I just want to keep emphasizing that I'm not, when I'm pushing back, I'm not saying it's impossible. The part for me that I keep going back to, again, this is a long view pod. This is a guy that was a really productive player, had multiple, they were actually split by an injury season, but multiple really good years at Syracuse, his sophomore and senior years, had a really good year as a rookie last year. I think he's legitimately good as a receiving tight end.
I agree. I'm playing a lot of devil's advocate. I want to emphasize, like, I agree with you on. I'm going to get just let me. I want to be in on this guy.
Let me finish because I don't know that I've really articulated the point. I think a big part of my point with him is about the uncertainty of seasons, and so that's part of also why I think the best ball part of it is intriguing. It's funny. I agree. I'm there with you. I don't do as much best ball. Readers of the Substack know that. I think in the late rounds you probably want the guys that are just going to be out there on the field. Like Juwan Johnson is the easy answer there to me. Some of the other names you mentioned, I mean Hunter Henry's fine. Some of the other names that you mentioned to me are a little bit tricky. Like Strange, I mean, may never actually have like big games. I think he's going to get squeezed from multiple directions. Like I actually think Koziel's going to have a real red zone role potentially this year. Like if Strange is a between the 20s tight end with a small target share, like catch and run tight end, like he's a worse version of Gadsden at that point. Like even if he's on the field a lot. But anyway, the best ball thing I'm trying to say that I agree. It's a very complicated range, and we're going to be drafting some FFPC teams together, and we're going to have to be making decisions on late round tight ends together. So it's a good thing for us to hash out. On
multiple of my FFPC teams, which like I don't feel awesome about because I could probably get him 3 rounds cheaper, but I don't feel like those teams are dead by any stretch. Like he's still a guy I want to be in the mix that I still think is interesting.
I just think it's interesting that like you would need to get him 3 rounds cheaper. There's not a lot of year 2 tight ends that did what he did last year. I mean, period.
Well, I
like the Ferguson comparison.
3 rounds cheaper, so I wish I didn't take him 3 rounds more.
Do you think he's going to fall 3 rounds over this?
Yeah.
I mean, I just think that's a fascinating thing because my point gets back to the uncertainty.
That's the one thing I'm 100% confident of in this whole discussion is not whether he should fall or what will happen, but I am 100% confident that he will fall. That
100% confident. I just think that's really shocking from the perspective of the actual profile, and what I'm trying to emphasize about the positive outcomes for Gadsden that I see are that like there's going to be people that are going to be tweeting at me or messaging me after week 1 and saying you're so stupid for that argument you had with Jacob in August. Look at Aronda Gadsden played 15% of the snaps in week 1. I honestly think it's not even just a part of the range of the outcomes. I get the FUD where that may be like the most likely outcome. That's what a lot of people are saying. What I'm trying to emphasize with our whole conversation here is we don't know shit beyond that. We don't know David Njoku staying healthy at this stage of his career. David Njoku lost a lot of the receiving production last year. Like Adam Levitan had a great tweet about it a few months ago. Right after Njoku signed, he was like, this guy lost a bunch of receiving to Harold Fannin last year. He stayed as a free agent like all offseason. He finally signed late. Nobody seemed to want him. And he signed cheap and like inexpensively. Kolar actually got a big deal. I'm concerned about Kolar, but the fact that Kolar has never really had a meaningful receiving role at the NFL level, to your point, I think what you said about if Kolar plays 77% of the snaps, then you just throttle down the tight end target share for this team. Kolar would still get targets in that scenario, but he wouldn't be like
he'd be like a Cade Otton at most.
Yeah, he'd be fine. He would be like whatever, which is a viable reason to take him in the 18th round because, to your point, there's no one else to take in the 18th round, a tight end or whatever. But back to the Gadsden thing, it's an argument that, like, look, Kolar could get hurt. Look, Njoku could get hurt. This is a deep team right now in August. We do this every year. You still want to care about profiles. This is a season where there's not a lot of intriguing tight ends, and we're doing sort of a dead zone running back thing where we're like, I've made this case in my tight end work this offseason that, like, with the advent of these multi-tight end, not the advent, but the increased usage of these multi-tight end sets, there's going to be a lot of offenses that are going to split tight end routes, and then there's going to be some that are highly concentrated, and we probably want the ones that are actually highly concentrated. And so I'm not trying to say it's, like, ridiculous, but we are doing a little bit of a thing with some of the profiles where it's like, just because this guy's going to be in best ball, it makes more sense, but just because this guy's going to be on the field running a ton of routes doesn't necessarily mean we forego profiles that we can't tell ourselves a story about, which this gets to Kenyon Sadiq as well, and why I've been in on him. We can't tell ourselves a story about it now. We don't know exactly how it works. People didn't ever move Harold Fannin up last year, despite how great of a profile he was, because of the same thing. He can't play enough behind David Njoku. They couldn't wrap their heads around how a tight end 2 was worth drafting any higher than, and the reality was he just was good enough that they had to get him on the field. Now, I agree with you that the tight end's a weird position, and the Chargers, all the stuff that we're hearing out of camp is like, even if Gadsden's good enough, they don't need him. They want to build the offense out of the running backs. They're throwing to Keaton Mitchell a ton. They want to build the offense out of the wide receivers and stuff. But the whole case I don't hear anyone making about Gadsden is if he's good enough, even if he's running with the 2s and 3s right now, that shit doesn't matter, man. People, they come into training camp with an idea that ADP is perfectly efficient right now, and then we have to move guys up or down just based on where they were running in camp. Gadsden was already too cheap for what his profile was. He had moved too far. And just because he's running with the 2s and 3s for the first 2 weeks of camp doesn't mean you have to push him down multiple rounds from there. To me, that is a weird response for the market. And you may be right. You're way more plugged in than I am. But to me, that is a weird response for the market. And it's the wrong way to play fantasy football. I see it I've seen it more and more and more over the years as we get more and more news. It's part of why we're doing the short view right now is this stuff. But people come in and they just go, I'm going to make adjustments to ADP with every bit of news, like ADP is efficient. My take is ADP is massively inefficient right now. It's been inefficient all offseason. There's a ton of opportunities across a lot of different positions. Go look at the mid-rounds at wide receiver. You and I were talking about it before the show, but it's a joke between round 4 and round 11 at wide receiver. There are so many players mispriced right now. There's a bunch of players mispriced that I've written about that have immediately risen a ton. I'm not saying I necessarily moved the market on them, but like Keaton Mitchell's one. We've been talking a lot about Tank Bigsby. He's been skyrocketing. Marshawn Lloyd, we talked about earlier. He's been skyrocketing. Like, those guys were mispriced already. They've also been getting positive buzz, but so it's kind of making both points at the same time. But the ADP is inefficient. That's part of why people want to move stuff based on news, but in some cases it's inefficient already, and then people want to make adjustments based on news where that stuff's already baked in. There was already stuff baked into Oronde Gadsden coming into camp after he had fallen for months, baked in about concerns that this kind of thing could happen early in camp. If this is still going on like closer to week 1, I'll probably move him further and further down my ranks. But I don't know. I think it's it's a lack of creativity of how this season could go for the Chargers to think that what Oronde Gadsden did last year can't pop up in different ways throughout an NFL season. Like, it's very likely that he's going to need to be used at some time this season, and that he's good, and that he'll be in a good offense, and that they'll be able to use him the same way that Mike McDaniel used Darren Waller last year. Even if he doesn't have a big week 1 role, the story of Oronde Gadsden's season is not going to be written. So anyway, I have a really hard time with this idea that we're like, we have to move him way down because there's been reports that he's running as a tight end 3. I think it's a misunderstanding of the different profiles. It's a misunderstanding of where David Njoku's at in his career, and what impact he can have, and who Charlie Kolar is, and what the ceiling looks like for that player, even if he's playing a ton. There are ways you've described, good ways, reasonable ways I agree with, that this could play out very poorly for Oronde Gadsden. I'm not saying that's not a part of the range of outcomes. And we agree that the floor has gotten way worse. But, I mean, people are just like super confident that what's happened in the first 2 weeks of camp means that the floor is the only thing now. And there are no ceiling outcomes. And I just think that's That's why I'm pushing back so much, not on you, but on like the stuff about the market and on. Anyway, we can move on. But
I mean, I'm gonna move him down because I had him ranked well ahead of the market.
I'm gonna move him down.
Probably not even as far ahead of the market as I had him in my heart, because like I ADP bake my rankings. But I'm moving him down. Like, my point is not my very slight pushback, I guess, like for me, is I didn't think his previous ADP was efficient, so I'm not moving. But I'm questioning my assumption that his previous ADP wasn't efficient, if that makes sense. Like, yeah, I was a lot more optimistic than ADP, and I'm starting to suspect that ADP may have been more correct than I was. However, his new ADP will still almost certainly be lower than my
where you rank him. That's you just described
also,
exactly my whole impassioned 2-minute, 5-minute rant, whatever that was. You just described exactly where I'm at. I have to move him down because I was ahead of even where he was. But like, if he's gonna fall that much further, I'm still gonna be drafting a bunch of Gadsden.
And if people are wondering, like, so in my like rankings, if people have my rankings, like part of this is like a mechanical issue of best ball rankings where I just know he's going to fall, like, unless the news drastically changes in the next week. But if the news stays stable for a week, he's going to fall, but it always takes a while for ADP to catch up to what's happening in drafts. So like, I just punish guys because I don't want you to catch a falling knife. And then you can just wait a week. And if you want to go back to drafting him, you can just draft him. You'll get him at a lower price. But anyways, so that's like a specific mechanical note, but from like a redraft perspective, from if you only had one team perspective, I still want to play Gadsden. I'm less enthusiastic about it, but I'm pretty sure we're going to get a more favorable price for it that I'm still going to like. So I'm going to be in on wanting to play Gadsden. Sadiq, he's an interesting player. He's a fascinating player because I was I think it's safe to say I was probably lower than you were on Sadiq as a prospect, and yet I was still drafting him a lot because his price made like no sense to me at all. For a guy that was going mid round one. I mean, most of the Jets skill player prices honestly have not made a lot of sense to me. I guess it makes sense to me. Like, it's easy to make sense of people not wanting to draft Jets players, but I think that they've just been, I guess, like poorly calibrated and like overly focusing on the negatives, considering the profiles that they have, especially the two young guys and Cooper and Sadiq, who I thought we were getting pretty close to free rolls on round one players. And it was especially odd that like Cooper was the more expensive of the two, you know, given Sadiq was picked 16 picks higher and I think a more interesting prospect. So I've been clicking a lot of Sadiq. The hernia stuff is tough. He's by no means off my board. It's another spot where I think the market will punish him more than I do in my rankings. But yeah, it's a raw prospect who I think needed a lot of development as both a route runner and as a blocker. It's a tough position to learn. You know, it wasn't that long ago that we used to say rookie tight ends can't do anything, and that got immediately disproven. But like, you look at Colston Loveland last year, I thought was a much better prospect who proved to be a very good player. But he missed most of camp with recovering from shoulder surgery. He got really slow played early in the season, and he was pretty much unstartable for half of his rookie season. And so if Sadiq's going to miss the majority of training camp, like it's hard for me to then project, oh, this is a guy you can just slot in your lineup week one. That doesn't mean I don't think that he's going to pay off down the line, but I do think the outlook has changed. I think we should probably expect as a median outcome that this is not going to be quite as much of a week one impact if he doesn't have that ramp up period time with the team. But curious your thoughts.
I agree with all of that. I think for home leagues, and you just detailed that he's like basically undraftable. He's going to get cut by whoever drafts him, and you can pick him up. I mean, it just feels like that's the way that plays out. My question to you is, with all the Gadsden stuff, Terrence Ferguson is fun, but you have an even later ADP and like for home leagues, shallower leagues, whatever, not playing on FFPC, deep tight end premium formats, he's not even draftable probably. I mean, he is if you want to just take a wild last round swing.
Draftable to me.
Yeah, he's not going to – I'm talking about like most home leagues that are like 16-round leagues and like 15 tight ends get drafted.
He's going to be my last tight end pick in every single home league because you don't even have to start him. He's going to play the free look game, and you just get like sometimes the Rams do things. They keep everything very close to the vest, and I just think there's like 5%. I think there's a 5% chance that we watch that game and we go, oh shit,
Terrence Ferguson.
They decided they're going to build the thing out of Terrence Ferguson.
Yeah.
And everybody wants to make a number one waiver. So why not just already have him on your team? And if he doesn't work, you can just cut him before Sunday even happens. Anyway.
Well, in some formats, in other formats, he's locked through week 1, and that would be my counter. Is that there's other things you can do with that last pick, but I've been writing it up the same way, and I completely agree with you about Ferguson. As far as like one of the most interesting late round tight end, like take a peek plays, but what you're acknowledging is a 5% chance is that there's a really low floor there. The question that I'm winding my way to is we both like Juwan. I have concerns like even into the like Isaiah Likely, Mark Andrews, Dalton Kincaid range. Kincaid is an example.
Concerns.
Yeah, me too.
I mean, if I'm in a home league, I'm drafting one of Bowers, McBride, Loveland, or Warren.
That's where I'm going. Does this just mean that we have to take one of the top 4 tight ends?
Yeah, it does. I mean, because like the range of tight ends that I liked, and I spelled it out earlier, that it was I've never been into the range of Goddard, Andrews, Kincaid. That's like a likely. That's been a stay away for me. Jake Ferguson. That's been a tough range at ADP the whole year. The range I have liked in the deeper formats where you're either picking 3 tight ends or or it's FFPC is that next group. That group's gotten worse. And so, yeah, if I'm in a home league and I only need to draft 1 tight end, like I'm probably just drafting Bowers. If I can't draft Bowers, I'm probably drafting McBride, Loveland, or Warren. Fannin is in play. Fannon's
a good pick. And then you have the potential for like Laporta and some of these other guys, but
I don't mind playing Laporta, but I'm probably already have my tight end by the time he comes off the board.
Right.
I'm not that into Pitts or Kraft.
So my point there is the mid-round tight ends often wind up being overpriced. What those profiles are to me is probably not as good of a pick from an opportunity cost standpoint as, well, I mean, it depends on the league you're in. If you're in a home league, some of those guys might go really late. You might get Pitts in like round 13 or something. I don't know. I mean, it just kind of depends. If enough people like push tight end.
It can be volatile.
But relative to the early tight ends and the opportunity cost there, I'd rather probably just take one of the elite, because I think the top 4 tight ends, and I have Fan and 5, the top 5 tight ends are all really, really, really interesting. That's where I was going. Like the whole pushback on Gadsden and the whole reason this conversation has evolved. And one of the ideas for the show today was to finish up our wide receiver discussion last week and do a tight end discussion. We've basically just turned the short view into a long view section of how to play the tight end position.
Nearing an hour and a half, and we're halfway through the first segment of the show. So
listen,
you were right
this
about
is the
it
way.
being a long one.
This is the way that our listeners are going to have to live. They're going to have to get used to this. But we just had our whole tight end discussion in the middle of the short view, and so we'll just throw that into the show notes or something. The whole thing about Gadsden and Sadiq and those profiles and Ferguson is those are the upside profiles this year. If you're looking for this year's fan, and it's probably one of those 3 dudes. If not, you're talking about Juwan Johnson. You said Strange. Like I throw TJ Hawkinson in here. You mentioned Henry, Goddard.
Schultz.
You're talking about a lot of routes.
These are streamers.
Right. Routes, but low ceiling. They're not going to contend with somebody in the Bowers, McBride, Loveland, Warren tier is going to put up enough of a ceiling that those dudes, they can be tight end 5, but there's going to be a gap between tight end 5 and the higher levels. You can still play those dudes, but I'm not like, from a strategic perspective, I'm not like, I'm going to get a huge benefit. I'm like, I'm not losing as much as I should be at tight end.
Yeah.
Anyway, I was going to ask you about that.
I agree. Yeah, I totally agree. And it's tight end's tough to talk about because I think the way you play it in a home league versus in an FFPC versus in a best ball draft are just the tight end position and what you need from the tight end position is very different. And the margins are very different in that late group. Yeah, if I'm in a home league, a lot of those tight ends you mentioned, Schultz, Henry, Andrews, Goddard, like a lot of these guys, it's like they're all the same guy and they're not meaningfully different from whatever one of them you can get off waivers on a week-to-week basis and just stream the position. So I agree. Like if you somehow find yourself not having one of the top 5 tight ends, like I do think it's worth taking a late round shot on a Gadsden or on a Ferguson, or maybe if Sadiq is able to get enough practice in before week 1, Sadiq, because you're right. Those are the upside profiles to take a shot on. I don't think that you're getting anything from like, I better get Hunter Henry on my roster week 1. It's like, I mean, you could stream him week 1, but like, I think he's going to be immaterial to other guys you could stream later. But yeah, for me, if I'm in a home league, like I can't imagine a home league draft that I do, like a Yahoo or ESPN league, where my tight end is not Bowers, McBride, Loveland, Warren, Fannin, maybe Laporta, but probably one of the top 5.
Yeah, makes sense. Let's keep plugging forward on the short view.
Whew. Real short view. Okay, that's all my injury news. I'm gonna rapid fire through all of the rest.
Okay, do it.
And then maybe pick one or two that you find interesting. So, conflicting Green Bay news. We had a tweet that had Reed starting practice at a 2 wide receiver set. That got people really excited. Then we had Jordan Love say Matthew Golden is going to be playing X receiver. Obviously didn't clarify, like it is theoretically possible he could play X in 3 receiver sets, but not play in 2 receiver sets. Anyways, I thought that was interesting because we talked about Green Bay on the show last week.
Really
Keyshawn
quick,
Boutte,
I'm going to go really quick on that. Reed being in a 2 receiver set was the less likely outcome. It was the thing that caught my eye more because that's not the thing we expected. We expected Golden to be in 2 receiver sets. Anyway.
Totally. I mean, it also could have been like literally just one random snap, but I thought it was meaningful that was the first snap of a practice that they did that. There's some degree of intentionality. It was meaningful to me. Keyshawn Boutte still likely to be traded. Eli Raritan, my goat, earning the tight end 2 role, rotating in with the ones, and it's reporting they're likely to hold off a veteran ad. I'd mentioned that earlier. I'd also mentioned Jacoby Lane is the quote talk of camp. There was a report today that he's potentially pushing Rashad Bateman to be the wide receiver 2. Denzel Boston, your UW guy, is just like getting a massively loud drum beat from every reporter in Cleveland. Casey Concepcion also getting positive reports. This isn't really a report, but just like the vibes seem like both those guys are going to play a ton immediately from week 1. Cedric Tillman's playing with like the 3rd team. I haven't heard a report on Jerry Jeudy in weeks. Like I doesn't seem to be popping up on my timeline. So positive for the rookies there. Josh Downs, my favorite player, maybe in the NFL, working inside and outside. And there was a quote from Shane Steichen that said, he's a guy that can play inside and outside now for us, and his role is going to improve this season. They may still sign Keenan Allen. The Colts squad show, which it was so funny because like Zane Denani, who tweets out a lot of the stuff, he was sending me a link to the Colts squad show where they'd said something. I was like, I promise you, I already listened to the Colts squad show, but it's crazy that you do this for 32 teams. But anyway, they were saying if they do sign Keenan Allen, they think it would be a 3rd down specialist role on limited snaps. Wouldn't affect Downs' snaps. Obviously, might affect his targets. Parker Washington projected to lead the Jaguars in snaps and production per. You say it.
John Shipley. I'm buying this one, and oh god, I'm gonna wind up telling you in a couple weeks that I was crazy.
And also per John Shipley, he had projected Travis Hunter to play 50% snaps. So on a recent podcast, he said he expected him to play 80% of the snaps on defense and 50% of the snaps on offense. And he said that would not come at the expense of Parker Washington. I've been reading into that is a reason to stop drafting Jacoby Myers. Has been a note that I've kind of taken from that because that seems to be.
I've been seeing that too, but Jacoby Myers, they just signed him to a $30 million fully it was $30 million of fully guaranteed money, a $60 million. A lot of the
Jacksonville Jaguars reporting could be explained if the Jaguars decide they're in the CFL this year. They get to play 12 guys on the field.
Yeah, maybe that would be helpful. All right, continue.
Because it's weird, right? Like, but it's you do get to a math problem. Like, on one hand, we're hearing Parker Washington is not coming off the field. He's going to play the most snaps. He's going to get the most production. Then we hear about how BTJ is having a great camp. Maybe it won't lead to as much production, but he's irreplaceable on offense. He draws number 1 corners, and he opens the entire offense up for us. And then you're also hearing Hunter's going to play, up to 50% of the snaps. It's like, if all those 3 things are true, it kind of has to be Myers coming off the field. But I also agree with you that in a vacuum, it doesn't make that much sense for Myers to play half the snaps.
See, this is the problem. And then
also they want to play more tight ends.
So this is the problem. This is what people want to hear. And I'm just telling you, the reports out of Jacksonville are always what you want to hear. It's the bait. It's the chum on the top of the water, and all you little fish are biting it up, man. Jacoby Myers got $30 million guaranteed after they traded for him mid-season last year. He got a $60 million contract, and they're just going to bench him? He's not going to play this year? All right,
okay,
sure.
Here's my question.
I'm not in on Myers. I am not in on Myers, but
here's my question to you. I'll
way too convenient. After. We're going to name him the inconvenient truth. Jacoby Myers is the inconvenient truth.
Ah, man. But I mean, I agree with everything you're saying about the way too convenient angle. I also have moved Myers down because there is a certain point where I'm like, okay, what
Dude,
am I
I'm
winning
biting.
when I win
I'm
here,
one of the
you know?
fish eating the chum. I'm 100%. I moved him down. I moved Parker Washington up. I'm ready to go. This is what I want to hear.
I know. Okay, so last year, this is the stat I had last week. Last year was an average of 2.58 receivers per route run on Jacksonville dropbacks. So I'll even increase that, even though they added a bunch of tight ends. I'll be generous. So we have 260% of route participation to work with. I want you to guess the week 1 route participation for the Jacksonville Jaguars wide receivers. It's got to add
267. Okay.
260. It's got to add to 260.
Oh shit. 260. All right, I'm gonna give you. So Parker Washington's your starting slot, right? But he's presumably going to come off in 2 receiver sets.
Well,
no?
they've been saying he's going to play slot. Well, Shipley's been saying he's going to play Z/flanker, and he's going to lead the team in snaps. So if you add that up, basically he's saying he's going to play slot in 3 receiver sets and Z in 2 receiver sets.
So I don't think Brian Thomas really comes off either because you have the vertical element. You need that. It threatens downfield. I don't think any of them's going to be super high. I get 260.
That's what you get.
I mean, so it becomes
Just
like 80 for Parker Washington, 80 for Brian Thomas, and then, I have to go down on Jakobi Meyers to like 65, and then I'm only leaving, like 35, I think, or 45?
Yeah, 80, 65, 35 would add up.
And I'm giving Travis Hunter 35. I do think Hunter's going to come in under 50%. I think the idea is going to play 50% of the snaps for the year is actually a good prediction. Shout out John Shipley. Great prediction there.
Right.
But I don't think he's going
hurt.
to. I don't think he's going to in week 1, but somebody will miss a little time, get banged up, and Hunter's role will expand those weeks. He's going to be like 35% of the routes week 1. That would probably, or 30%. Maybe it's 80, 70, 30, something like that.
Yeah, 80, 70, 30 is like exactly what I was going to say. So I'll be a P-Wash Bull. I'll say 81, 79, 70, 30.
All right. You
we're right in the same range. I do agree though with Hunter. It's more like the odds that those top 3 guys stay healthy for 17 games really long. That's not how NFL usually works. Injuries might be the inconvenient truth, and then that's how you get higher route rates for some.
I'm making a rule.
Maybe injuries are the convenient truth.
I'm making a rule to get our short view a little faster. No more talking about John Shipley reports, at least on this episode. What do you have anything else before I can circle back to your other reports?
I have a couple other things. I don't know if you care or not, but the Bucks they're using a heavy dose of pony in camp. That was in the Jeremy Fowler article. They were talking about how much they're using pony, and then today Roster Watch was like tweeting out snaps, and they had like 30% of their snaps with Irving and Gainwell both on the field together, which was pretty darn interesting. Obviously, Jalen McMillan wasn't practicing today, so maybe that's part of why. But
that's probably a big part of why. This is the kind of thing that, like, if your third receiver is out, then you work on the non-3 receiver set, like. Yeah. It's the kind of thing that I think we overreact.
And even prior to the McMillan thing, there has been a lot
doing some of it
buzz about how excited they are to use pony. Yeah.
But sure, like what would you do in camp on a day where your third receiver is out? Well, you'd probably work on this package that you want to do a little more of. Now, the idea that they want to do a little bit more of does seem a little bit interesting, and Gainwell's, I think, interesting. I want to go back to Downs, working inside and outside. Yeah. He's the most mispriced wide receiver in fantasy right now.
He's the most mispriced player in fantasy right now.
Yes. I am doing, yes. Yep. I don't know.
He should be like around. He should be around 5 pick. To me, like if his ADP was where Christian Watson's was, I would be like, it's really tough for me to decide between Josh Downs and Davante.
This isn't fair because I told you this before the show. I told you I was working.
I've been saying this for weeks.
Okay, you're giving the hot take that my projections have been out for 2 weeks, and he's right there for me with Christian Watson, Emeka Ibuka, and Lad McConkey. In my projections, people are really high on Ibuka, and maybe I'm a little low on him. I can understand how I could be, and he could hit in a meaningful way. I have all these guys for between 110 and 130 targets. But Downs to me is like he's going to get a lot of volume in this passing game. It's adjacent to the Alec Pierce stuff where I'm a little bit lower on Pierce. I think Pierce got the huge contract, and he's going to play a significant role for this team, but it's going to be a lower target role than Downs because it's by necessity.
Yeah.
He had 49 catches last year.
Did we go through last year? Did I go through like all the stuff that I wrote up in my did we go through last week all the like splits that I wrote up in my article about all the different like in this formation and how like Downs and Pittman's were like always overlapping and Warren's and Pierce's were always overlapping?
No.
It's interesting stuff. So I'll pull it up.
You get Downs. I'll give you Downs. You're the Colts fan. You get Downs.
All right. Sweet.
But I want to hear the take.
Yeah, so I mean, a lot of it was like I sort of had like even before I got really into the data, we talked about this way back on Jacob Gibbs' show. I was like just watching the team every week. I felt like Downs had the most overlap with Pittman in terms of being like a true drop back player that is a guy that you want to have. Now I'm trying to pull up the darn
you told me this. We talked about it on Gibbs' show. I do remember this now, but that was a couple.
But I had all the snaps. Anyway, here we go.
The Cliff Notes
for Michael Pittman's. Yeah, I have it up here now. I think here we go. Yeah, so all 11 personnel pass plays last year. Josh Downs led the team with a 23% targets per out run. Pittman 22, Warren, Pierce were 20 and 17. Then if you isolate non-play action 11 personnel. Downs 23, Pittman 20, Pierce 17, Warren 16. If you go to third and fourth down passes, Downs 29, Pittman 19, Warren and Pierce 15. If you go first and second down play action, so the opposite. Now we're looking at like more built off the run type. Warren 36, Pierce 24, then Pittman at 23, then Downs 21. 12 personnel, Warren 28, Pierce 25, Pittman 20. 12 personnel play action, Warren 31, Pierce 28, Pittman 19. My point being is that there's actually
please break that down because you just yelled a bunch of numbers. I fell asleep. The listeners have been hitting fast forward for like 10 minutes.
All right. So to summarize all that, basically, I split up into these two components of what I think are more like your pure drop back passing. So 11 personnel, and then beyond that, I went even further to non-play action and to third downs. And on the other side, I looked at 12 personnel and further into early downs and play action. And with the idea that one of these groups of pass plays is more about pure drop back passing, the other group is a little bit more about taking advantage of the, intermingling or the interaction of the run game with the pass game. Okay. And in that latter group, what you saw is that Pierce and Warren had easily the highest targets per out run, much higher than Pittman and Downs. In the pure drop back situations, it was Downs and Pittman, and then a big gap to Warren and Pierce. And I'm bringing all that up to say that where Pittman is leaving is the stuff that they already want to use Downs for, and what Warren and Pierce were doing a lot in the offense last year is the stuff that they weren't really using Pittman for anyway. So my point is that with Pittman gone, Downs is the one who I think is going to get called upon a lot to do more. The potential fly in the ointment is what if Warren takes a big step and they want to use him a lot more because he's a year 2 player? I think that's a totally reasonable way to play the offense. But Pierce is going into year 5. I think we know who he is. He's hurt right now. I don't think he's the guy who's going to have this big role change. I think it's going to be Downs or Warren and probably both, especially if they don't sign Keenan Allen. Anyway, that's kind of my big rant on the Colts stuff. I think we see it very similarly. But yeah, I'm extremely optimistic about Downs. The reporting on him about the 2 wide receiver set stuff goes like even deeper. Like Ben Solak was at Colts camp. He wrote stuff up about how they're going to use more 2 wide receiver sets with the wide receivers to the same side so they can play Downs in 12, but put them in the slot. They were talking about how they're going to use pre-snap motion to put Downs in behind in a stack behind the other receiver to get him off breast coverage. Like that's the level of intentionality that is coming up in these reports. I just don't buy that like Shane Steichen's been working on all these specific game planning things about how can I maximize Josh Downs and play him more. And then they're going to be like, well, we decided to sign Keenan Allen at the 11th hour, so we're going to scrap all that. Like that doesn't make sense to me. There's such a level of intentionality about how they want to use Downs. The team can't stop talking about how much more they want to use Downs. And fantasy managers, I feel like, have PTSD from believing in Downs when he was in different situations with different players on the team and it not fully coming together. But I think he's an epic smash this year.
Yeah, he's gonna rise a ton after you just broke that down. Good job. He's wildly mispriced. I'm trying to figure out how high to rank him. That's not absurd because some people use the ranks and Similar to what you said, the mechanisms that we have to go through as content producers when we create ranks. Like, you don't want to leave stale rankings on guys that are falling. I do that kind of stuff too. When I push guys up that I think are massively undervalued, I use a target and fade mechanism, but I still often push guys at least a full tier above. But it's like, man, I people use these ranks and then just draft strictly off them. I don't want them drafting him 5 rounds too early, but he literally might be 5 rounds mispriced.
Josh Downs is a reason to draft Brock Bowers because you could just get a top 24 wide receiver like in the 10th.
Yes, agreed. The last thing I want to circle all the way back to was I mentioned the Reed thing as well, but if we get this is an extension of the Reed thing. I said the Reed 2 wide receiver set tweet was interesting. The fact that the reality with Josh Downs is it's the betting favorite right now that Josh Downs is playing in almost 2 wide receiver sets. It seems very clear. They don't really have another receiver. We've been talking about this. I don't know. When I did the ETR pod, I don't know how much I talked about it with you on the different shows so far. Maybe we talked about it on the wide receiver show. When I did the ETR pod with Indy, it was like, yeah, I mean, this is when you go through the projection process, like, yeah, this is what they have to do. This is what they're going to do. Shane Steichen's a smart coach. There should be no shock whatsoever, everything you just said. That was new information to me, but that he's devising ways to use Downs in 2 wide receiver sets that is also very intentional about what his limitations are. Use them, stack the receivers on the same side, stack them. I was saying yes, not because I hadn't heard that, because I'd already thought that when I was going through the projection. Like, there are answers for this, and Steichen will find them. This is
one of the things where I feel like fantasy analysts are very much like, they get stuck on like very specific limitations, and then like shockingly, Shane Steichen is smarter than those of us who are doing fantasy analysis. And it's like, if you believe that Shane Steichen is a smart coach, and I really do, then like he's gonna figure out a way to get Josh Downs on the field and not Ashton Dulin.
This is the exact kind of thing that, by the way, not to circle all the way back to the Gadsden thing, but to what you just said about fantasy analysts, this is the exact kind of thing I was trying to emphasize in the Gadsden thing. I could be wrong on the Gadsden thing, but I've been right on the Downs thing, and it's a similar situation, and you have been too, obviously, but I've been saying this about the Downs thing for months now, and it is very clear. I think that within uncertainty, there was more upside than people were willing, and it's like a lack of imagination, I think I said with the Gadsden thing. It's what you just said as well. Fantasy analysts do this, and they miss. And then what happens, dude, is every season we get into week 1 and we get hit with so much information about all 32 teams that no one actually debriefs this part of it. But the next year we do it all over again. And I've been saying this shit for 8-10 years now. Like, it drives me a little bit nuts how many times we've had to relearn the same lesson, that this is the way that this stuff works. But anyway, Jacoby Lane and Denzel Boston, I want to talk about those two. Lane, you mentioned Taka Camp. To me, that's a little bit more of, it's the first 2 weeks. Rookies, looking great, are going to look great. I don't even necessarily think that it's a huge negative on Elijah Surratt. It certainly, for me, means that you should move Lane ahead of Surratt. He was drafted earlier, but Surratt's, to me, the little bit more interesting profile. And yet, yes, this is a positive for Lane, but people take this and run with it. Oh, he's the camp start. It's the first 2 weeks of camp. He's having a good early camp. There's still time to come. There's still other things that can happen. He might pass Rashad Bateman. He might not. Next week might be a different story, and then people won't rehash or remember that last week they were getting way too excited about Jacoby Lane. The flip side of that one was the Denzel Boston one. I actually am really responding to this one, probably because I'm a little bit biased. Every time I talk about him, I say I'm a UW fan, etc. I think Denzel Boston's really good at football. I've had a hard time being clear about that. I was pretty optimistic about a Dunze last year, particularly not so much, or 2 years ago, not so much Polk and McMillan, but when you're a fan of a team and you watch every single snap and you watch all their stuff, it's a little tough because the projecting from college to pro stuff is tough regardless. There's guys that show a ton at the college level and they cannot translate that to the next level. And you never see that same sort of dominance of skill at the next level, and there's not really a clear reason why, and this is why the NFL struggles at this type of evaluation, etc. So I do sometimes have a tough time with the guys that I watch every snap of them and rooted for them and really like them, but Denzel Boston was a baller in college, and the fact that everyone's like, he looks like an absolute baller in Browns camp is not surprising to me as somebody who watched a ton of Denzel Boston. Guy's a stud, played with a mobile quarterback, and still, so some of the numbers that he didn't put up, I would be like, man, he was our most reliable player in a unique offense for a quarterback that held the ball a little bit, etc. Damon Williams. Anyway, Denzel Boston.
He's also a guy that had the best excuse of maybe anyone ever for having a late breakout. Like he played behind literally 3 top 3 round picks for 2 years. And like was never going to get on the field in a million years. And then when he did go to the field, he was immediately productive. So,
and then the other part about it relative to Lane, the rest of the contrast I wanted to draw was Lane does have Surratt there. It's an offense where there's probably only room for like 2 really good receivers. We haven't seen Lamar Jackson offenses support several receivers because of the mobile QB thing I was just sort of alluding to with Denzel Boston when he was in college. We're not going to have that quite. I mean, all reports on the Cleveland QBs are that this is like the worst QB battle that's ever existed, that they're horrible. You're in on Shitter Sanders. You tweet about him. You love him. But he's probably going to start week 1, which is fine. But if Boston's hitting to this degree...
you could do something worse in round 18. We just talked about Charlie Collar.
For sure. If Boston is... not for sure, but whatever. If Boston is hitting to this degree, there's a couple things. There's the draft capital element. He's a round 2 pick. He does have another rookie with him in Concepcion. Jacoby Lane and Surratt were both later round picks, but Boston and Concepcion kind of played different roles. Lane and Surratt are both sort of outside receivers, a little overlap. Concepcion and Boston are going to play together long term in like complementary roles.
Yeah, they clearly view this as their long term wide receiver 1 and wide receiver 2, and I like Concepcion's profile more, but they don't probably care which one is the 1 and which one is the 2. They probably want the both to be really good, and they'll figure it out.
I'm not moving them ahead of Concepcion, but I am reading these really positive camp reviews, like you said, that are coming from everywhere as what you described, that we're going to get more Boston earlier. I'm probably not like throwing Judy completely out as you kind of were, but I'm certainly taking Boston ahead of Judy because I think you want the rookie upside.
Yeah.
But Judy's going to run a lot of routes, I think, too. I think it's going to be those 3. And
I think they're going to be super heavy 11 because they don't really have any other tight ends on this roster. Like behind Fannin, I mean, one of the reasons why we haven't gotten into the run blocking wars with Fannin this offseason is like there's literally no alternative. So they're like, no matter whether the team cares about his run blocking limitations or not, he's going to play every snap because I think that their tight end depth chart, like, they drafted a guy out of Cincinnati, Joe Royer, in like the 5th. I think they probably have like some veteran on the. I couldn't even name another tight end on their depth chart. Do you remember it from your projections?
No, I honestly don't.
So like I think they're going to be one of the highest. Jack Stoll, they have our guy Jack Stoll, who used to be like a 3rd tight end for the Eagles. So yeah, they're going to play. I think
Blake Whiteheart.
Blake Whiteheart. That sounds like a Game of Thrones character. Him and Ronnie Rivers would get up to some stuff for sure. But they got nothing going on at tight end. So I think, and Cedric Tillman's been playing with the 2nd and 3rd team. I think it's Zaya Bond has been rotating him with the 1s. I should mention him. He's probably going to get some snaps, but I think pretty quickly into the season it's going to be pretty consolidated. I think on Concepcion, Boston, Judy, and Fannin.
Yeah, agreed. I think Boston's going to struggle to earn a ton of targets because I do think Concepcion's a better target earner and Fannin's a really strong target earner, and I don't think Judy's going to go away. All of this is very optimistic for me on Boston getting early playing time. I would just emphasize. And then I think he's going to be efficient. I think he's going to be a player. But I do think because he's going to be, your X receiver, lining him outside, having to take on some tough roles, it's going to be tough for him to be like a huge
And he's not
impact.
A guy like... If you're the Browns, like I could see some weeks where they can't generate anything because their quarterback play is abominable, and their offensive line can't really block. And I could see like game plans or Monken's like, okay, how do we just get like something, like literally anything? And it's if you're gonna do some like schemed up BS with screens and gadgety stuff, that's Fannin and Concepcion's music. That's not really a Denzel Boston calling card. So I think he's a player that will hopefully show some stuff this year and that we can be really in 2027 in maybe a more functional environment.
I love that. So that is a short view. It took us 2 hours, Jacob.
53.
Now, listen.
Short view.
I'm going to make this point. We named it the short view. We never said it was going to be short. The point of the short view was to get us, even though we like to get very deep into things, multiple layers deep, we went long on many of these topics, was to get us to talk about a lot of different topics. There's a lot to talk about right now. We went through 2 hours of discussion there. We figured out how to play tight end in all sorts of leagues. We figured out a ton of interesting stuff. The most misvalued player in all of fantasy football. A ton of interesting stuff about a ton of happenings and talked about a ton of teams that was the point of the short view. I loved those conversations. It was 2 hours, but that was a great 2 hours. That said, we still have to do a long view topic, or it's not the long view. And so we're going to do a draft. We're going to do a draft. And I don't think anyone's fast forwarding through the short view to get to the long view. We were talking about some good stuff there. I am not going to apologize to anyone. You can apologize if you want.
No, I won't. This is part of why we did this show. It's part of why it's named the long view. It's like a bit of a joke at ourselves. Like part of why we're doing the show this way is like we're not doing search engine optimization. So if we are doing a 3-hour podcast, a 3.5-hour podcast today, then you're getting a 3.5-hour podcast today. So I hope hope you enjoy it.
Yeah, we're loving it. We're not going to feel insecure about it. The long view is up. We are going to draft things that we want to know today. If we could flip over the card week 17 and know one thing about one player's full season result, his targets, his rush attempts, his yards, receiving, passing, or rushing, did I say? Receiving, passing?
Yeah, I wasn't even going to give you targets. I was going to say...
targets. We didn't say targets.
Okay.
You're right.
No, so it's anything that you get fantasy points for. So if you're drafting a quarterback, you get their passing yards and their passing touchdowns, plus their rushing yards and rushing touchdowns. If you draft a running back, you get their you get their rushing yards and their touchdowns and all the receiving stats. And if you're drafting a receiver, you get their receptions, receiving yards, and touchdowns. But you don't get their targets, you don't get their route shares, you don't get like their pass attempts, you don't get any team level stuff like PROE or team points per game, any of that. But the idea here is it's the players who you think would have the biggest impact on how you draft this year, and you can interpret that however you want. So it can be really wanting to know something about a specific player. It could be maybe that specific player tells you a lot about the offense, or it would really inform how you play a particular positional group. It could be anything, however you want to interpret it. But it's whoever would be you think the biggest, most valuable piece of information to know to help you draft fantasy football teams better in 2026.
All right, you get first pick. Who's it going to be?
All right, easy. Travis Hunter.
Travis Hunter with the 101. He calls it easy. I think that's a reach. I don't even really have him on my list, to be honest with you. I'm going to pull this up in a way that we can show for the YouTube.
Oh, we gotta get Davis to make some Claude slop.
I don't know the reference, but
it's just every time that we've come up with like a gimmicky idea on Shipley chasing this year, Davis will like build some like somewhat functional tool.
You don't have Gretch.com over there anymore, so you have the the Davis Claude tool. I'm just going to do this in Excel. You can read that, right? All right. Jacob takes Travis Hunter with the 101. Explain it.
Yeah. I mean, we were just talking about how impossible it is to figure out what's going on with Jacksonville. And so I think Hunter is the most important piece of the puzzle, because if his stats are extremely muted,
then what do you know?
I know that the other three guys are consolidating the passing game. And then I'm probably drafting a ton of Parker Washington. I'm pretty interested in Brian Thomas Jr. I think it's going to be one of the most interesting offenses in football. So I want to know the route distribution. If Hunter's stats are massive, that changes. I get 4 players of what I know what to do with knowing Travis Hunter stuff. Because if he has big stats, then I want to draft Travis Hunter, especially in best ball. But then I know that those routes are coming from somewhere else. And so Jacoby Myers could come off my board. Thomas probably comes off my board. Parker Washington, I'm moving down considerably. So I feel like I'm getting 4 players for one stone if I know the Hunter stats.
Well, I think if you get good Hunter stats, you're getting some information. I think if you get like some pretty like average Hunter stats, you kind of don't know when they came. You don't really know how much the other guys consolidated. You're saying you draft a lot of Parker Washington, but that could still be pretty wrong. I don't know if you're getting a ton of really actionable information, but that's your opinion, man.
That's my opinion. All right,
I'm gonna go. I have a long list.
You get 2. We can make this a snake draft.
No, I don't want to do a snake draft.
You want to do a snake? All right.
Well,
all right.
I mean, we could, but
I don't care.
It seems. I'll I'm gonna go. I mean,
Let's
I
just
don't
go
want
back and forth.
I don't want to give too much away, but I will say that I think I'm not gonna do it because it's boring. But I think like there's the really obvious of like, oh, CMC is like, like okay, like finding out whether CMC stayed healthy or not probably dictates a lot. But that's also true of like,
I actually don't think it dictates that much. Like, because like if I found out that one of those elite players like has terrible stats, well then I know not to draft them. So that helps. But if I just find out that they have great stats, it's like, well, what does that do for me? I expect them to have great stats.
CMC and Puka to me are guys that if they stay healthy, can project for like meaningfully more than anyone else. Like Puka has that targets per out run.
You think they would project for meaningfully more than Gibbs?
Well, maybe not Gibbs, but you get CMC at such a discount, and I mean, yeah, that's been the deal with CMC for like several years. It's like you take him at 107, and like you can easily project a healthy CMC season to be the overall player, like number one player, and you're getting him at like pick 7. And Puka's like targets per out run, like 2 of the last 3 years are like, both of the last 2 years are 2 of the top 3 at a whatever the route minimum is in like the PFF era. Like so he could just consolidate so much volume in a fully healthy like huge season. And so anyway, guys like that are really interesting. I'm gonna go to a top of another position, but I'm gonna do Colston Loveland.
All right.
I think you get a lot of information about the tight end position from Colston Loveland. I think he has some massive ceiling scenarios.
Very high on my list.
I think you get a lot of information about Luther Burden immediately. I mean, not necessarily all the information, because if you get a really great Loveland projection, I don't think it necessarily means Burden can't have a good season as well. But I think you get a lot of. Caleb Williams is a really interesting impact there. But if Loveland just has an average season, part of the reason I would do this is it would dramatically change my interest in hammering Bowers and McBride before trying, because there's this whole discussion now of like in leagues that are not tight end premium, you can make a decision to like pass on Bowers and McBride and get Loveland in like the 3rd or the 4th, and it's like that's a pretty viable thing. If I can just go hit elites at running back and wide receiver, if I know that Loveland is going to do what I think he's capable of doing, then I think the optimal build is go non-tight end in the first 2 rounds and then come back with Loveland, right? Like that can be massive. If he's not putting up that season, then I probably want to be more aggressive on Bowers and McBride. So it gives you a lot of information, I think, about the early rounds. Anyway, Colston Loveland's my pick.
I like that pick. That was very high on my list. I had both Loveland and Burden high on my list, and maybe I'll pick Burden later. But I think that's a fascinating one. This one, maybe you'll say this is fancy play syndrome, but I'm going to take Fernando Mendoza.
We have very, very different approaches to this. I like that.
So
Explain
the reason for
Mendoza.
The reason for this pick is, now there's a little bit of a risk. The risk is that like if the stat line is like super low, then I guess what I find out is that they played Kirk Cousins for a lot of the season. But I think that also tells me something. Which
you don't even get pass attempts though. You just get yards and TDs.
I get yards, yeah. But anyway, so that's a little scary because if I get because then if it's the Kirk Cousins, I don't get that much information. Although I think that if it gives me the information that Kirk Cousins played a lot, unless Mendoza comes in, gets hurt, and Kirk Cousins goes back to Cousins, I think that tells me they actually started pretty well, because I think the better they start with Kirk Cousins, the longer he plays, of course. The reason why I picked Mendoza is that Genty and Bowers are probably going to be 2 of my most drafted players, and I thought about just picking Genty or Bowers, which
would have made a lot more sense.
But I think it's more fun. I get information on the offense.
I'm gonna sound like such an ass to a lot of the listeners, but I want to be clear. This was Jacob's idea, so you can't tell me that he doesn't understand the rules. Like, this was your idea.
I definitely
Dude, if you get Mendoza's yards and touchdowns, you don't know how many games he played. This is like, I'm sure that this is a bad pick. This has to be a bad pick. What do you learn if you just learn,
it's completely unfalsifiable because we will never learn.
So we'll never know. We'll never know.
It's a good or a bad pick.
You're hoping to get a really positive result that you're like, oh, now I can be really in on Genty and Bowers. But what if you get something in between? You're like, well, maybe he only played 8 games and it's really good for 8 games.
I mean, that's possible. That when I made this list, I didn't really think through the fact that we wouldn't get the pass attempts. But I
fair enough.
I'll stand by it regardless. Yeah.
If you thought, I mean, I'll give you a mulligan if you want to change.
No, I'm sticking with it.
All
I mean, it cost me.
I do think
$0 draft with completely unavailable results, and I guess I may be using this to like prove a wider point than I am to be like hyper specific on the format of the rules. But I think my point is that I really, really wish that I knew whether the Raiders would be competent this year. Because
that's great. Yeah.
If they are a league average offense this year, which I get that there's some limitations to exactly how much we could derive that from Fernando Mendoza's line. But if we knew that they were a league average offense this year, then I think Genty becomes a massive smash. I think Bowers becomes an absolute must draft. And I think it's also the case that, like, I don't even think they can be a league average offense if those guys aren't. So it's like, I need to know that there's the environment for them to be that. But then also, like, if you were to tell me, oh, the Raiders are going to be actually better than a lot of people think this year, I'm pretty confident that Genty and Bowers don't even get hurt, because I don't know how they get to be a particularly good offense this year if those guys aren't a big part of it. So I think that that's one of the most interesting teams, where you have a team that a lot of people think is going to be terrible, but still has top two round picks that I really want to invest in.
I like the logic there. What I will give you props on is I think quarterback is definitely a way to play this in a meaningful way, because you get a good feel for the whole offense, obviously. I think the quarterback... So two things I'll say. I didn't love the Hunter pick because I think one of the things, like what I did with Loveland, is I think the Bears are going to be a really consolidated offense. I would really love to know one of the key pieces in a consolidated offense because of what it tells me about the other pieces in that consolidated offense. With Hunter, you don't really know if it means Brian Thomas or Parker Washington or whatever. I kind of gave that take.
Yeah.
Patrick Mahomes to me is really interesting. This is a team that has been first or second in pass rate over expected every year of his career. He's coming off an ACL. There's a concern that he runs more. If his numbers are pretty low, it could. I don't know that it tells you a whole lot about Kenneth Walker, because I think you have the concern that they're just bad, or the possibility that they're very run heavy, and Walker had a great season. I think both those things could mean that, if Mahomes had a little bit worse numbers. But if you give me a little bit of worse numbers on Mahomes, I know that I can stay away from Rashee Rice a little bit better. I can stay away from Xavier Worthy a little bit better. Oh, before we left the short view, I was actually going to ask you about Cyrus Allen. And one of the reasons I was going to ask you about that that's another place where some buzz has cropped up that I think is really pretty relevant. And I think it's pretty relevant because the Chiefs' offense...
him a couple podcasts ago. I said I thought he was a little interesting.
And I probably said I didn't think he was. But when I went through the projection process, this is one of those teams where I was like, this has to be a consolidated team. I've mentioned the take that Tyquan Thornton only had 19 receptions last year. Yeah. I gave a little bit of an optimistic Jalen Royals take, I think, when I did the projection pods with the ETE crew, because you're like, there's got to be something else here. Rashee Rice and Xavier Worthy are not dependable. People don't want to take them as high as their profiles probably argue they should go because of mostly dependability issues, or they think they suck. Well, if they suck, then where are the passing numbers going here? Travis Kelce is also going meaningfully lower. So part of the Mahomes thing, I think it works both ways. If he has really high numbers, I think you want to be in on the KC offense. I think you have to realize that somebody between Rice, Worthy, Kelce, or like Cyrus Allen is going to be a smash if Mahomes actually throws well. I think their collective ADPs are too low for what Mahomes probably will be, even coming off an ACL, even if that PROE is not first or second in the league. My point there is, like, it's probably still going to finish top half. Like, even if they come down and they're run heavier, they're not going to be the Eagles. They're not going to run like more than anyone in the league, right? Like, that's not where this offense it's not what Andy Reid's done since he had Donovan McNabb in Philly. He was throwing a bunch, to Brian Westbrook out of the backfield. He's using his backs as receivers. Like, he's been using a pass-forward offense for 30 years, like 20 years, whatever, however long he's been coaching. It's been forever. And you have Patrick Mahomes. I know he's coming off an ACL, but I don't think that we're going to get no pass rate out of him. So I think getting the KC pass stuff right is really important, but it's also a consolidated one where if I get a really positive Mahomes thing, I have different price points. I can know to attack Rice here. I can know to attack Xavier Worthy later. I can know to attack Cyrus Allen in the late rounds. If I get a really poor projection for Mahomes, I do think it works that way too, because I think there's a lot of value with KC, but like if I got that information, it would help me get off of it a little bit, because both Rice and Worthy are risky, and I do see the risk, and I don't want to be all in on them necessarily. So like if I could find out that Mahomes had a really bad season, it would get me off of what I think are probably two pretty good pure values that the market is scared of. I could be like, all right, I'm scared of him too, So anyway, that's my pick.
All right, I like that pick. He was on my list as well. I've been
pick the
doing
good ones
wall.
off your list. You got a lot of good ones on your list.
I got good stuff on my sheet right there. Look, I've been doing some off the wall picks. I think this is going to be a less controversial pick. I'm pretty sure anyway. I'll take Malik Nabers,
Yes.
which is
on my list.
I feel like our job as fantasy analysts is to try and be right more often than not about a lot of things. One of the things I feel the most helpless about is predicting injuries. Like, I have no special area of expertise on this, so it's really hard for me to have like a very firm take about Malik Nabers, because I can like give you all the takes in the world about why I think he's one of the best receivers on earth. And then it's like, well, how healthy is he going to be? And I don't really know. And it's a matter of like pricing that uncertainty in, which is obviously part of our job. But in terms of taking one of these completely like known unknowns off the table, knowing if Malik Nabers is going to be a massive impact this season would do a lot for me. Because if I get a huge return, then I just don't have to worry about the second round this year. He's just my pick every single time.
I think that's a fantastic one. It was going to be one of my early ones. I'm going to go Kyler Murray.
Fuck, that was my next pick. I was between Nabers and Kyler.
Similar to the Mahomes take, you get a lot of information about the offense, and Kyler himself obviously is really discounted. If he has big numbers, to take him. But it tells you a lot about Justin Jefferson. It tells you a lot about Jordan Addison. I think it even tells you about TJ Hawkinson late. I'm not quite so certain that Juwan Jennings is like super fantasy viable, because last year looked more like his pre-2024 numbers, which was not very fantasy viable from a per route basis. 2024 was that big spike season for him, but now he's in an offense where he's like buried as the wide receiver 3 behind two really good wide receivers. And part of the reason you bring him in, and they brought him in late and they paid him a limited amount of money, part of the reason you bring him in is he's a really good blocker. He makes a lot of sense as the third receiver in that 3 receiver set. He'll do the dirty work. I don't think he's going to have a massive receiving role. And so that also just means that I think this is going to be a concentrated passing game with Jefferson, Addison. And then I think there's some maybe potential for Hawkinson to still rebound at this point, a couple of years removed from the ACL. But if I got really good news on Murray, those are the bets that I would be making. And I think you can make on Minnesota. If I got bad news on Murray, then that means either like he's terrible, or like if the numbers are really low, he got hurt or he got benched. If he gets benched for JJ McCarthy, I want to
need to worry about how McCarthy's stats are, because they're not going to be good.
That's exactly right. I want to be out on Justin Jefferson. I want to be out on Jordan Addison. I want to be out on this whole offense. And so Kyler Murray.
Yeah, that one was one where I was torn between Kyler and Nabers. Now I really wish I picked them with one of my first 2 picks, then I could have got both. But with Kyler, I went through the process of being like, oh, I'm going to pick Kyler. And then I was like, wait, but what if I don't know whether his low stats mean he was bad or he got benched? And then I thought about it for one more second. I was like, well, if he gets benched, it doesn't fucking matter, because his whole offense is toast if he's bad enough to get benched.
Kyler arguably should have been. I didn't rank mine. I just put a bunch in a list. Now that we're talking about it, Kyler is arguably the 101 in this. Like, this would be because Kevin O'Connell's still a really good play designer. He got a great offense out of Sam Darnold a couple of years ago. I still think like there's been a lot of FUD on the Vikings. They are cheap. There is the opportunity for this to still be, I think, a good offense. Even if Kyler does have limitations, we all kind of know he does, it still could be a good offense. They were 9-8 with JJ McCarthy last year. And like Max Brosmer, like this is still a team that over the Kevin O'Connell era has overperformed. That is the story of the Vikings. They were 14-3 the one year, and they were clear regression candidates. They were 9-8 last year with like just no offensive line and horrendous QB play. Like, how do you go and like Justin Jefferson wants to quit football? It's so bad, and you go 9-8 with that. Like, I know the defense was incredible, but I'm just saying like this team has tended to overperform. The offense wasn't really the overperforming side last year, but the story of these last few years for the Vikings
still got some like half decent play out of McCarthy in the end of the year, where like, well, I shouldn't say half decent play out of McCarthy. They got like half decent results at times despite their quarterback, like over the latter half of the season, where like they were like finding ways to be like, oh, like there goes Josh Oliver sprinting open down the sideline, like somehow, or like they couldn't get the ball at all to the good players, but like Kevin O'Connell was emptying the bag on that. All right, I'm sensing a run on quarterback here. I didn't want to be boring, that's why I went Nabers, but I'm gonna take Daniel Jones.
Okay.
He is, was fantastic last year, coming off of the Achilles. And I think like it's a team with 4 very fantasy viable players. I think it's going to be very consolidated on those players. And if Daniel Jones is playing at the level he was playing last year, like part of the reason I really want Jones here is that I have a high degree of confidence in how I'm reading this passing game. So I would love to know if that matters, right? Like if Daniel Jones just looks terrible off the Achilles, or there's not able to recapture the magic, then I probably don't need to worry that much as about like figuring out the Josh Downs, the Tyler Warren, and the Alec Pierce. I certainly have no need to take Jonathan Taylor in the first round. So I think it's a spot where I would love to know if this offense is going to cook like it cooked last year. I think you're going to get a pretty decent chunk of information on whether that's the case based on Daniel Jones's numbers. And then if I get positive feedback, I'm at least open to Taylor. I'm taking Josh Downs in literally every single draft. I'm probably taking Tyler Warren a lot too.
That's the first one that's not on my list that I think was a really great pick. So I got to give you your props. That's a really good use of the QB. He was great in the first. Nabers was on my list, but I already gave you crap for Hunter and Mendoza. You've only made 3 other picks, so it's not like. But Jones was a good one, I think, because he was. I don't think people realize that the Colts going into their bye after the first 10 games,
they're the best offense in the league,
best offense in the NFL for every team's first 10 games of the year. The Colts had the most total yards. And then they had 2 more games, and then Daniel Jones tore his Achilles. They were bad games, and people were like, yeah, they're regressing. Their schedule is getting harder, but like it was 2 games. You know, they had a couple down games against tougher Ds. Yes. They played Houston in one of those.
Fibula.
Jones was?
Yeah, his last 4 games, he played with a fractured fibula before he tore his Achilles.
Prior to the Achilles, I don't remember that. That's
no, he was like limping around. Like I don't know if you remember the Chiefs game, but like he could barely move. During the Steelers game, he picked up a fracture in his fibula, and then he played 3 more games, like virtually unable to move, and then he tore his Achilles. Which like I think partially the Achilles was in part, I think, a compensation injury for playing on a broken leg. But anyways, one of the reasons why I think their efficiency went down is that he was playing on a broken leg for a month.
Totally. That makes perfect sense. I love it because I like the consolidation of the volume in that pass game, and I feel confident about the way I want to play it, which is Downs and Warren more so than Pierce. And Taylor, you'd get a lot of information about Taylor if you knew that Daniel Jones played a full healthy season. He would be a great first-round pick. I don't think people realize that Taylor ran the third most routes at running back last year. First season over 300 routes. He went over 400 routes. It was a whole new element to his game last year. And his receiving, it wasn't just like his receiving got bolstered by the Phillip Rivers stuff late, because we know Phillip Rivers is a check down guy. His receiving per game, better with Daniel Jones, not including the Jones injury game. He got hurt in the first quarter. Better per game with Daniel Jones through the healthy games than it was in the, starting from the injury game and on in the Phillip Rivers games, because that injury game was mostly played by Riley Leonard. And I think Taylor had, the reason I'm emphasizing that is Taylor had 0 catches in that game. Daniel Jones got hurt in the first quarter, and then they went run heavy and they didn't really throw. And anyway, Taylor's receiving role, he's more of a dual threat than I think people realize. Like I saw somebody tweet the other day about some of that optimism about Pete Carmichael and James Cook and the receiving upside for the Bills. I'm not super into that, but they were like, I've got James Cook's receiving so much higher that I'm putting him over Jonathan Taylor. And I was like, well, like what about Jonathan Taylor's receiving? Because it's already there. It was there last year, and they had Amir Abdullah as the second receiver running back, like a legit veteran receiving down back. They don't have him anymore. They're just with the young guys.
I mean, they frankly have almost nobody. I mean, it's like nobody. McGowan and DJ. If Jonathan Taylor, for as long as he stays healthy, he's going to lead the running back position in snap rate. It'll be him or McCaffrey, but
he's going to play a ton.
Taylor's going to play like 93% of snaps in neutral.
The one thing he doesn't have is a great per route receiving role. He's not going to get a ton of targets. He's not going to do it like McCaffrey.
They don't
those
run
guys,
like angle routes and stuff with him
right
for HM, but like they will throw screens to him, and he will get enough checkdowns just by virtue of running 25 routes a game.
And again, he never had over 300 routes in a season per PFF's routes data and was over 400 last year. It was a massive increase that Jacob's telling you with the snaps number. It's going to be there again this year. He's a really intriguing first-round running back that to me is more with the guys at the very top of the position. I have him in the same tier as Bijan. I have him in the same tier as Christian McCaffrey. And then it's those three, and then it's a gap behind them. So anyway, you'd get a lot of information from this Daniel Jones pick. I really like it. I'm going to go, because I'm not just going to take quarterbacks all day. I'm going to go with Omarion Hampton. It's a little bit off the wall. You do have him on your list. Okay. I really like the Hampton ceiling scenarios, and they're tough. He didn't come out great in my projections because I'm also really high on Keaton Mitchell. But a lot of the stuff we talked about with Gadsden and a lot of the pushback there was I have been trying to figure out how this offense is going to look. I do completely agree with you, and part of the way you detailed that the tight ends might just not do much, that it would be very running back heavy and wide receiver heavy. I think the running backs are going to be very, very involved. The big stat for Mike McDaniel is that like the last 4 years, all in Miami, even before Achane was really the main guy, dating back to like the Raheem Mostert stuff, he had X number of, I don't have the number of targets in front of me, but X number of targets to the running back position. I don't really do a lot with coaching trends like that, but so much of what McDaniel does is scheme to the players that he wants the ball to get to, and he really wanted to get Keaton Mitchell, and obviously you have Omarion Hampton that's a superstar. So a big part of the Omarion Hampton play is also Keaton Mitchell. I'm getting a 2-for-1 here. If Hampton doesn't have a great year, I'm all in on Keaton Mitchell at that point. I'm already kind of all in on Keaton Mitchell. People have, obviously heard that. I keep getting tagged every time he does anything in camp, which is quite fun. But the argument would be, because McDaniel put up wanted posters for Keaton and all that. The argument would be,
did you know another player he put up a wanted poster for?
Yeah, Alec Ingold. He's going to use that guy too. It's guys that he has a clear plan for how to use. Yeah. He was gonna need a fullback, and he wanted Alec Ingold as well. But oh man, where is the stat? I got it here somewhere. I'm trying to find the running back target snap, but I'm struggling to find it.
I don't have the running back target stat, but I can give you what is a bit of a proxy for that, which is they were first, second, and fifth in backfield expected fantasy points the last 3 seasons.
That's great. Yeah, that's a great proxy for sure. I did find it, at least 114 targets 3 straight years there. Again, some of that's Achane's skill set. I wrote a whole piece about how Keaton Mitchell's similar to that. I think the downside for Keaton Mitchell, the concern I have, and the reason I'm not taking Keaton Mitchell in every single draft is, he is a smaller back and all that. And Omarion Hampton's a legit, really good profile. People are concerned about Kamani Vidal cutting in. Hampton was much better as far as the peripherals in the same offense last year and a lot of the per-touch stuff. My pretty strong belief is one of Hampton or Keaton Mitchell is going to be a really big hit this year. Hampton obviously goes really high, but he's relatively cheap. I think he's either going to be a smash at that cost, which is why I'm picking him here to find out if he is, or if he's not, then I think Keaton Mitchell is going to be a smash. I think their collective cost is low for what I think the overall running back production for this backfield would be. So I get to find that out. That's a really key one for me.
I think that's fair. He was the second highest player on my running list here. I literally just wrote up Omarion Hampton this morning. I'm doing this home league redraft guide. It's going to be even longer than this freaking podcast. But but I just wrote up Hampton. I said I thought he was one of the most important players to get right. I thought he was a pretty big boom bust profile, but a guy that I have ranked higher in my home league redraft rankings than I do in best ball, where I'm a little bit more floor focused. I think he has massive upside. Could totally be a league winner. Coming in that range. And I'm going to stick with second-year running backs. You stole Hampton from me. I will take Trevion Henderson.
Yeah, he was the very first person I wrote down when I thought of this concept. I didn't think he was a first-round pick, but he's a good one. Go ahead.
Yeah, I mean, part of this is just that, you could use this for, honestly, a few guys in this range, but I think we talked about the running back dead zone on our second show. I think I would love to know if there's going to be a huge hit from the running back dead zone this year and who it is. I don't feel like I need to know that much information on like DeAndre Swift and David Montgomery. Like I feel like I know what they're going to be, but like Henderson and maybe another couple guys that maybe I'll get to. If I knew that one of these guys was going to be a massive hit, that would definitely impact how I build my draft plan. It would make me more interested in drafting a Brock Bowers in round 2, a Malik Nabers in round 2 at the expense of, trying to start running back would be more open to wide receiver in round 1. It would open up a lot of things structurally for me if I knew there was like a massive hit Trevion Henderson season waiting for me in round 5. And then also if Henderson's numbers were like terrible, then Ramondre Stevenson becomes, a pretty interesting play because it's probably going to be one of those two. And if they're middling, then I guess whatever. Obviously, for all these picks, you want something to be at the extremes to give you the most information possible. But so you do get a bit of the 2-for-1 element. I think you get a structural element, and it's a situation that I think is challenging for me to evaluate. So I would really value the information because I think Henderson's pretty darn good. I don't know for sure how the coaching staff is going to play it, and I would love to get that info. Oh, you're on mute, Ben.
Whoops. Love that. Love the Ramondre info as well. Agree with you about the dead zone impact. He was the first name I wrote, as I mentioned. The second name was another guy that I'm not going to take, but similar concept. Right now I'm going to take Jameson Williams. I think Jameson Williams is potentially one of the most interesting players in fantasy this year. We talked about him, I think, on the last pod. You are not quite as high. I was just looking at some stuff from my Stealing Signals spreadsheet that I have. That's a weekly basis, and it's got all the weekly numbers. And in terms of average route share at wide receiver, for whatever reason, I was on that as I was kind of preparing some stuff for the season. Jameson Williams had the second highest average route share. It was like 97% or whatever. I think behind only Jamar Chase last year. All the other guys that high, like the upper 90s, are the superstars. I don't think, again, people are weighing enough that he went from like 475 routes in his third year, which was really his first year as a full-time player, which was 2024, all the way up to 600 plus routes last year, and that they basically don't have anything really behind him. I don't think Isaac Tesla is like that meaningful. And then you have, the Laporta impact and some other things. If he had a really bad year, I would be in on Laporta. I'd be that much more in on Gibbs. Gibbs is one that I would consider for this exercise. The problem with Gibbs, relative to me mentioning CMC earlier, is Gibbs goes one-on-one.
The problem with Gibbs is that the information is actionable 1 out of 12 times.
1 out of 12 times, exactly. And if he has a massive year, you're maybe a little bit off the other Lions. The Lions are another very concentrated offense. If Jameson Williams has a really bad year, I'm that much more in on Gibbs as the clear 101. I'm that much more in on Amon-Ra St. Brown. I'm that much more in on Laporta because I really do think it's going to be those 4 guys for a lot of it. But I think Jameson's the big winner here. To be honest with you, he would be probably higher on my list if it wasn't for like the little quirks of like the QB stuff with like Kyler Murray and Mahomes and stuff. Williams to me is like for the spirit of this idea, which is like what you were doing when you took Hunter and stuff. It's like, who are the players that we just want to know, and it would just like help us for our like presence of mind a little bit. Jameson Williams is that guy. I really see it for him as this could be the career season that he had. I think people are misunderstanding how volatile his first few years were. The fact that we've had a quiet offseason, we've had a couple quiet years where there hasn't been bad vibes like there was with the suspension stuff and the internal stuff and like moping on the sidelines early in his career a little bit. And there was stuff where like Dan Campbell was getting asked about his body language all the time. And we would talk about a couple years ago Jameson Williams vibes being the worst that anyone could ever remember. Yeah. This guy has completely turned his career around. He had the second highest route share of any receiver in the NFL last year. He is now a reliable part of a really good offense. He's a good blocker. They compliment him on all that stuff. The big issue with last year was the first half of the year, he was kind of forgotten about. Laporta had a really big first half. Second half of the year, great. Post-bye, and when Laporta was out, he paced for over 1,400 yards, including one of his goose egg games where he had 0 catches throw that in there. He still was pacing for 1,400 yards, and there's only a few receivers that have 1,400-yard seasons anymore. I mean, that's an elite season. This is my, like, George Pickens of this year. I was really in on Pickens last year. I was like, people don't realize how the profile in Pittsburgh is going to translate to the situation in Dallas, and all these things are going to come together, and this is the career season, like, as a 5th-round pick wide receiver. I've been saying that about Jameson. I saw that with Pickens in the projections, and I was like, this
massively
is clear to me.
with you on Pickens. I'm not on the Jameson one, but I massively on
yeah,
Pickens.
I could be wrong. When I say that, it's not like, oh, I'm always wrong on these things, but I'm getting that same feeling that I got with Pickens, where it's like, when I went through the projections, what I'm seeing over the years and how this has progressed, this is the year where if you're fading Williams, what I would say to somebody like, I don't think you're completely fading him, but to somebody who's really out on him, if he runs 600 routes again, you better be really confident that targets per route is going to stay really low, because he's so efficient per target. He's great ball in hand. He's not just a deep threat like some of these other guys that I've been out on, like Christian Watson, Alec Pierce and stuff. Williams does so much more ball in hand, yak per reception and all that, and his ADOT's lower, and it has been the last 2 years. They've been using him more creatively. If he runs that many routes, which I expect he will, there's no like clear third receiver.
In fact, Isaac Tesla is being passed by Greg Dortch apparently.
Yeah, that's hilarious. The targets per route was a career low last year. The routes went way up to 600. The targets per route was a career low. You better, and it was better in the second half when Laporta was out. You better be really confident it's going to stay down at like 16%, because if that targets per route is even like 18, 19%, Jameson Williams is going to be smashed, dude. If it's at 20, 21%, he's a top 5 wide. Like I think he could threaten Amon-Ra's production is like part of like what I can see from this season, because he's so much more efficient. Amon-Ra's going to get way more volume, but like he like yardage wise, I think they could
see it
close.
Being like Pickens Lamb last year.
Yes. Yeah, and I think they could be similar in yardage, even with Jameson being a lot lower receptions, and that Amon-Ra would still have a good season in this scenario. But yes, it would be a lot like Pickens Lamb. That's a great, obviously to continue the Pickens corollary. But and then to the point of this game, if we find out that Jameson Williams had 700 yards, I'm like, dude, I'm smashing the other Lions, because it's a concentrated offense.
Yep. I think that's a great pick, and you've been selling me a bit on Jameson. He's also goes. It's so interesting, because I actually think a lot of these price differences are like actually like very wrong. But he anyway, he goes a lot cheaper in redraft than he does in best ball. So as I turn my focus from best ball to redraft, I'm getting a lot more interested in Jameson Williams. Like I have him ranked solidly above market in my FFPC rankings. I expect he'll be the same in my home league rankings. And you've got me much more excited about the upside scenario with him for sure. I think that's a great pick. I will pick. I mean, I'm gonna do the exact same thing that I just did with Trevion, so it's kind of lame, but I don't care. I'll take Bishop Tuten.
Yeah, he's the other one.
I already started typing it before I even said it, so you knew exactly where I was going with that.
He was the other one that I wrote as the second guy, but yes. He's a great one. Yeah, I mean, you get the Chris Rodriguez. I thought you were going to chat about it, but you get the Chris Rodriguez info. You get the Jacksonville offense info. If he has a big year, you know the offense was good. I think you can ascertain some interesting stuff about their wide receivers from that. If he has a bad year, I mean, Chris Rodriguez is a smash. If he has a good year, you learn so much about the dead zone.
And I mean, Liam Cohen backfield is so valuable. Like, I just love the way this guy uses running backs. I think I agree. This is like, I think there's going to be probably a winner here. Especially because the price discrepancy is so vast that if Tuten was like terrible, even if C-Rod's like true ceiling is not nearly as high as Tuten's, I think he could still be a massive hit at cost where he's currently going. And yeah, Tuten I think has the upside of being one of the defining players this year. So I'll take him. You're back up.
I'm going to do Jordan Tyson.
That's a good one.
We got the hamstring issue. We got a fun offense in New Orleans. We know they're going to be a little bit up-tempo, that Tyler Shuck's good enough to support some weapons. We just talked about the dearth of late-round tight end options. I think if you find out that Jordan Tyson has a really bad rookie year, I think you have to be pretty in on Juwan Johnson.
Totally.
The Chris Olave information, obviously. I've been pretty out on Olave because of Tyson, and I think Tyson could potentially even be close to overtaking him towards the back end of the year, which is a problem for how high Olave goes. I like Tyson at his cost, and if I find out that he had even like 800 yards, if that's back weighted, then I'll be happy. If I find out that he had like 400 yards, then I'm probably willing to take Olave, and I'm smashing Juwan, I think. But yeah, I mean, there's a possibility that it's like 1,200 yards. I mean, he's a top 10 overall pick. Like, you could have a monster rookie year. There's a possibility he's like the key to the season, right? That's why we draft rookie receivers.
All right, I got a couple games on my list that are like higher than the guy I'm about to take, but a couple of them are similar to guys I've already taken. A couple of them are similar to guys you've already taken. So I gotta go somewhere a little bit different and have some fun. I can guarantee you this guy's not on your list. I'll take Malik Willis.
Okay. All right.
I think he's interesting I think he's interesting for a couple reasons. I'm bearish on the Malik Willis experience. But like, I'm open-minded. I mean, the whole point about Malik Willis is we've barely seen him do anything. So I think it would be tough to have
bearish but open-minded
confidence. Yeah, I'm bearish but open-minded.
I don't know if you want that on a dating profile.
Well, I'm not looking to date Malik Willis, so it's probably going to be okay. I think the biggest impact for me it would be twofold. I mean, one, if the stats are great, then I don't need to worry about early quarterback this year, because the ceiling on him would be so high if you get the rushing volume that you get, and he's available in every single draft. So if you just get like an awesome result on Malik Willis, my quarterback plan is solved for 2026. And if you get a pretty like way more optimistic than I'm projecting passing result, then Devon Achane goes from a guy who I'm currently fading to a guy that I'm looking to jam. Because I do think he's one of the most talented players in the NFL. And I think he is like, would be an absolute smash given the lack of targets around him, but for my complete lack of confidence in Malik Willis to lead a reasonable volume passing offense and reasonable play volume offense. So I think I get a lot of information about how to play quarterback this year, if in the unlikely event it's super positive. And I either get information that kind of confirms my desire to fade probably one of my 4 or 5 favorite players in like the history of the NFL, or to actually go ahead and target Devon Achane. And also, if the stats are really good, then I feel like I want to take like a lot of late darts on. I mean, I wouldn't know who it's going to be, but like, what if I get the result of like, oh, he threw for 3,700 yards this year? Like, I'm taking Greg Dulcich in every draft, and I'm probably at least taking some random darts on like their ridiculous
rookies. Yeah, probably the rookie receivers. I think that's a great one, because if you did find out some stuff about the pass volume, I'm also open. I'm also bearish and open-minded on Malik Willis. If you got really great rushing numbers, you could take him. I think that's a great one. I think it's a great one because you learn a lot about the offense, and an offense that's really underpriced. I'm not taking Achane. I'm not playing this offense really at all, but you could talk me into playing it if I knew Malik Willis had some good stats. So I do really like that one as well. I'm looking at...
You're getting back on my wavelength after those first 2 picks. Those threw you off, but we're
no, every pick you've made since then has been a great pick. They've either been on my list or the 2 quarterbacks were not, but they were good QBs. The first 2 were just objectively bad picks. That's your bad. You gal-brained this game way too early in the first and second round. No, I'm gonna go Mekhi Lemon for the same, like a very similar reason to Jordan Tyson.
Yeah.
I think Lemon's an incredibly good prospect. I think we would learn a lot about Devonta Smith, who I'm currently fading, and I'm really jamming Lemon. We'd learn a lot about Dallas Goedert. If Lemon had a really, really bad year, then maybe I would be willing to take some Dallas Goedert. I'm currently fading. If he had a really bad year, maybe I'd be willing to take some Saquon Barkley. I'm currently fading. I'm not really into this offense very much, but well, I guess if Mekhi Lemon had a bad year, I'd be willing to consider more pieces of it. It would just be really helpful to me because I'm kind of expecting him to really have a strong year in an offense that doesn't do a lot. And if he had I'm not ranking him massively high because it's like, again, this offense doesn't leave a lot out there for its skill players sometimes because of the Jalen Hurts effect. If he had like 800 yards, again, I think that's really challenging for everyone else at their costs, because Barkley goes really high. Devonta Smith goes really high. Devonta Smith's going right after that, like, sort of big tier break in my rankings. Yeah. So right after the elite receivers drop off, there's Devonta Smith, whatever it is, wide receiver 13. It's like, man, that he's not the 13th best receiver this season for fantasy football in my mind. When he has that good of a rookie receiver behind him, you could boost him up because AJ Brown's gone and all that. But anyway, I would learn a lot about that though. I might be into it if I knew that Mekhi Lemon had a really bad rookie year.
Yeah, I didn't have Lemon on my list. I had Smith on my list, but for very similar reasons. And I think Lemon is a great pick there. We can do a few more rounds of this. I don't want to get like too competitive where we're just like taking like a million. But I'll take Davante Adams. Okay. And I think he's one that it's part of the reason I'm taking Adams is for Adams' sake, who I'm not really taking, but like, hey, if the Oracle comes back and tells me he's catching 14 touchdowns again, I'll change that. But one of the reasons is that I think if the stats were like crazy big, then I know that Puka got hurt probably. And that would drastically change how I play the first round. And then also if they were really bad, then my guy who I've taken on almost every team this year that I have done a redraft on, Terrence Ferguson, is just like even more of a priority. Because I mean, part of the reason why I'm so bullish on T-Ferg is I'm guessing Adams is a little closer to washed than not. And it wouldn't surprise me if the Rams had to find a secondary option and T-Ferg gets installed as a far larger piece of the passing game than imaginable. And like we were just talking about how dire the tight end position is late. I think he could be a real like joker in the deck that completely changes how the tight end position pans out this year. So I feel like I'm getting information on 3 players with Davante Adams. And I guess the one way that this goes really, really badly is if I get really poor information on Adams, I start clicking a bunch of Puka and T-Ferg, and then I realize the reason why Adams has such a shitty season is Matthew Stafford's like back fucked up or whatever, and they all have to catch passes from Ty Simpson this year. But anyways, I'm gonna hope that's not the case.
Oh, that's kind of funny. I hadn't thought of that. I thought it was a great pick until you said that. No, I'm just kidding. No, I think that's a great pick. Very concentrated offense, and the direct Terrence Ferguson tie-in. Even after you took the pick, I was like, yeah, you'd learn a lot about Puka, and you learn a lot about Adams himself. I mean, he could be a reasonable pick if he scores a bunch of touchdowns again. But the Ferguson tie-in as well, I think that's a really strong pick. Great 8th round pick, better than your 1st or 2nd round pick. Should have been your first. I'm gonna take Jayden Daniels, not because I care all that much about all of the players in his offense that he would impact, but because I want to take a lot of late round quarterbacks this year. There's a lot of upside QBs. But if Jayden Daniels scored like 26, 27, 28 points per game, I mean, it could be Daniels or Lamar here. I would just take them both, and maybe I'll just take Lamar next pick.
On my list, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, either of them, these are the 2 guys to me. Josh Allen was a QB1 last year. People get mad at me that I don't give him the props. He scored almost 4 points per game less in FFPC scoring than Lamar Jackson as the QB1 in 2024. There were 4 QBs that scored more than Josh Allen. He continues to score as the QB1 or the QB2 almost every year. That consistency is great. He deserves to go high. But I'm not, from an opportunity cost standpoint, I'm not taking a quarterback early unless they can gap the field, because what happened last year when he finished as the QB1 is Drake May and Matthew Stafford were very close to him, and so structurally you would have preferred to take in Drake May or Matthew Stafford from the later rounds, or the late season Brock Purdy stuff or Trevor Lawrence stuff if you picked that up off the waiver wire or you had him in best ball or whatever. Those were the things that won. Late round QB1, because Josh Allen didn't massively gap everyone. It doesn't mean he was a bust. He was an overall QB1. But what I want to know about early QB ADPs, and particularly Daniels, who's got the cheaper ADP, that's why I took him before Lamar. It's just that he's cheaper. He's a discounted version of the play. Is do they hit a real ceiling? Because last year, if either Daniels or Lamar stayed healthy and hit a ceiling, if Lamar hit his 2024 year, if Daniels hit what I think his 2024 year sort of could have been, if you factor in what he did in the postseason, he played 3 postseason games, and you take out the game that he left early with injury. So like in his rookie year, he left that one game really early with a chest injury after a long run. I think it was against the Panthers. It was right away. He played like 5, 7, 8 snaps, whatever. And then he played hurt the next couple of weeks. If you do some factoring in what Daniel's ceiling really looked like his rookie year and in the healthy games and into those postseason games, his points per game were very similar to Lamar's, and they were scaling up late in that year where they were really letting him throw a lot more, and he was doing a lot more as a passer late in 2024. 2025, obviously, injured, misses time, comes back, not as effective. They had some weird game flows where they were like protecting him and they pulled him out of games even though he didn't get, like the Minnesota game, their team just kind of got destroyed and then they kind of took him out of the game just to kind of protect him. It was a lost season. I think his ceiling is up there. If you look at the like rushing rates, I actually projected him for the most carries per game. Both Allen's and Jalen Hurts have come down a little bit, and Lamar's have come down a little bit. I think there's some potential for regression positively for those guys as well. But Jayden Daniels is the one that is still young enough, and the first 2 years had rush attempts per game numbers that are like, he has the potential to run a lot more than those guys, a lot more than most every other QB, other than maybe like Malik Willis matches him or something. But Daniels also could have the QB, like the passing numbers with it that Willis does not project for. And so in terms of the real ceiling scoring potential, I think he's playable early. I don't want to structurally, but if I found out that he scored a ton of points, it would also give me good information on Terry McLaurin, potentially Stefon Diggs, some other guys in this offense. But the main thing would be it would teach me a lot about what I would want to do at quarterback. Yeah,
I totally agree. I had Jayden high on my list, and I also had Lamar high on my list. And yeah, I'll just take Lamar. He was my top player remaining. He was already giving me my next pick. Part of the reason why I maybe lean the case that you made for Daniels being more important than Lamar, I thought was really compelling because I actually had Lamar higher, and then you probably changed my mind on that. But the reason why I originally was more excited to take Lamar is that Jayden Daniels, I do feel like is more about Jayden Daniels. I have a lot of conviction on Zay this year, and the nice thing about Lamar that I like is that like if he has a massive year, there's not a lot of other ways that can go other than that Zay has a massive year. And I also feel like it works the other way around. Like if you're telling me Lamar has a massive year, like Zay's not getting injured this year because I don't think Lamar is having an awesome year if his top options are Mark Andrews and a couple of rookies. So I feel like those two are like two of the most correlated players to one another in all of fantasy football. And I get to know how to play the quarterback position this year for the same reasons you mentioned with Jayden Daniels. And then I also feel like I get to know whether I get to confirm or deny whether to be really in on kind of one of my favorite receiver picks this year.
I love that as well. And yeah, just to be clear, you were saying that I convinced you to take like Daniels first in this draft.
Yeah, okay. Correct.
Yeah.
Correct. No, not above Lamar. I was saying I had both those guys like at the top of my list. I had Lamar, then Jayden.
Yeah.
And you were like, yeah, I should have actually had Jayden higher, but
I'm still ranking Jayden Daniels,
Lamar higher than Jayden in fantasy, but I also really like Jayden in fantasy.
Yeah, he's just a little cheaper too, so you get that going as well. Yeah. I still have Jayden Daniels as my QB3. I did put Lamar 1. Allen I think deserves to be up there. I just have a tier of 3, those top 3 guys, but like
Jayden is the only quarterback of the top like 8. I haven't gotten there yet in my draft guide, and I haven't read yours yet, so I don't know if I'm stealing or not. But Jayden will be the only early quarterback that I will list with a target designation this year.
Yeah, I did not put him as a target just specifically because I think you want to play late round QB, but obviously ranking him in a tier with Lamar and Allen, a tier above guys that are going ahead of him in ADP like Joe Burrow and Drake May, sort of implies that he's a target, right?
Yeah. He's not a target.
Right. So I'm going to go. I got 2 picks that I really like here that are kind of correlated to.
Right. We'll go to 12. So you got 4 left. We'll make this 12 is a natural number in fantasy football.
I can't finish this draft without taking Xavier Worthy.
For 0.1 seconds, I was like, is he taking Xavier Legette?
I would learn so much. No, Xavier Worthy is the pick.
I was
His
like,
price.
So you want to talk about Fernando Mendoza's a waste of pick? You think Xavier Legette, dude?
I love that. Xavier Worthy is insanely cheap for what his profile theoretically could be. I understand it's theoretical, but this is an exercise where I get to learn actual information. If he has a really bad year, I would be pretty in on Rashee Rice early because I think you'd have to be. I'd be pretty in on Cyrus Allen. It's similar to some of the Mahomes talk earlier. I don't think they have a lot of other shows in town, and I do think they're still going to throw to some degree. Like they're not going to just be happy to not make the playoffs again this year. They were one of the most dominant dynasties in all of football for several years in a row. They had a horrible year last year, even before the ACL for Mahomes. They're going to come out gunning a little bit this year. They're going to try to win games. And if Worthy's bad, like, I still think they're going to be throwing. I still think they're going to be trying to put up numbers. I still think, so I'd be taking Kelsey. I'd be taking Rice. I'd be taking guys. I don't want to take Travis Kelsey, but this team is so thin that I think there's a possibility that Travis Kelsey's a reasonable pick at like tight end 10 or whatever. So Xavier Worthy is mostly about, I want to know what Xavier Worthy's doing. It's kind of like the Jameson Williams thing where it's like, I just want to know what his season was. It would help me think through a lot of different things, whether I can push wide receiver a little bit and all these things, because I still think there is a ceiling enough of it. I mean, I'm more down on Xavier Worthy than I was last year, to be clear. It's not even close. I'm not as interested in having him on my teams at all, but it's a little bit like what I did with Kyle Pitts for multiple years early in his career, where it's like, I don't think the thesis is gone, and the whole market is way out on the player now. They're like completely out on a guy who is in a big routes role, in an offense that's going to pass a lot, that has a good quarterback, that historically has a good coordinator. We talked about in the last show, when we were talking about Worthy and Rice, I was like, well, then what are you doing with the Chiefs? And you think you made a compelling case that maybe Andy Reid's just done. And those are interesting, angles as well. But the Xavier Worthy at like wide receiver 45 or something, like, you guys are going to make me be back in on him. I want to know what he did, just to save myself.
I think that's fair. Non-derogatory, that's fair. I'm going to take a guy that I bet someone is listening to this screaming and asking why we haven't taken this guy yet. But I'll take Jonathan Brooks.
Oh, that's a really good one that I honestly hadn't even thought, but somebody should be screaming at us for not taking him yet. That's a good one. I told you, because as we got live,
I didn't have him on my list. I completely blanked. And then like about a minute ago, I was like, wait, why haven't we taken this guy yet? Because he's a running back that literally nobody knows what he is. He's the biggest black box in fantasy. He's steaming up boards. I think he fits what you want in this game, which is like, if not him, then who? Which is like either Jonathan Brooks is like, Brooks is one of the picks that is most likely to either be like a smash or like one of the funniest things we ever did as a community. Like when we look back on this in multiple years, like I think the rate of outcomes is so wide. I don't love Chuba, but like if the report back on Brooks is like, no, he had 40 carries this year, or I guess I don't know that, but I would know he had 200 yards. Then like, I do unfortunately have to take Chuba Hubbard a lot. And I think that with Brooks, like he's a guy that has I think the potential to be a legitimate league winner, or the potential to be like one of the worst picks in years. So I would like to have that information.
I guess I disagree with the thing that it would be like funny in hindsight, or he'd be one of the worst picks in years or whatever. Like his price is what it is. It's discounted to your point about him being a league winner. It's discounted to what his profile is. His profile is similar to Jeremiah Love's, but he's missed 2 years. And so, we're concerned as far as like, and I know I said that earlier in the show about Marshawn Lloyd, but Brooks is the one that's actually really similar, where evasion rate, yards after contact per attempt, breakaway run rate, yards per route run as a receiver, all these peripherals are like, they're a touch below Love. I think he's a little higher in the evasion rate and a little bit lower in the other three. Now, he had a lot fewer touches, and so when Love is able to maintain that over a longer sample, it's much more meaningful. But like Jonathan Brooks was the top running back taken in his class. He was a second-round pick for a reason. Off an ACL. The Panthers wanted to wait on him.
Might have been a late first if he was coming in healthy.
Right.
Yeah.
He might have been a first-rounder. They wanted to wait on him anyway, or they were willing to wait on him anyway. Use the second-round pick knowing they were going to have to wait probably a year, and then they ended up having to wait 2 years. But this is a team that has had intent with this player and is interested in this player. I guess I don't... I hear that theory on him that, like, we should just know that he's bad because of the injury. It's like, dude, look at his profile. We're looking for outliers. Like, this is a guy that's going way discounted to. He's better profile-wise, capital-wise, and everything than Bashal, Tuten, than all those dudes in the dead zone. He's going behind them because of the injury stuff. We're getting the discount. We make risk-adjusted bets. We're getting that discount. We might be wrong. He might be a zero, but it's not a dumb play. I mean, you make your bets, I mean, I'm willing to make that bet a little bit personally. And so anyway, I think it's a great one. I said to you right when we jumped on air that I hadn't really looked through. The one position I hadn't really looked through was the running back position. I thought that was like the dumbest thing. Probably a lot of people are screaming at their podcast saying, why aren't you guys naming more running backs? Because it's a very important position to know whether guys stayed healthy. We probably should have just named a bunch of early running backs like Jeremiah Love and like Breece Hall and all these things. I mean, that's probably the way to play this. I am going to go with one right now. I'm going to go with the late running back. I'm going to go with Marshawn Lloyd.
That's fun. Yeah,
I just think,
nice.
I mean, whatever. Who cares? We're playing a silly game. I just thought of him when you said Brooks because it's another really fun prospect profile that's very injury related. It would give us a lot of information on Josh Jacobs. It wouldn't really, if he had a really bad year, it wouldn't give us a ton of information on Josh Jacobs, frankly, because they could both get hurt. It could be a James Conner, Trey Benson situation fairly easily. But if he has a really good year,
like Josh Jacobs limps along to 3.7 yards per carry all season, and you could have survived him, but you didn't need him. Yeah.
It's probably better to take Josh Jacobs in this draft, but I don't draft Josh Jacobs in any kind of a draft, so I can't take him in this one either. But it would make more sense to take him because you would know whether or not he had a good year, and then if he had a bad year, you'd know to take Lloyd. But I'm just going to draft Lloyd. I want Lloyd.
Because you're not taking Jacobs anyway, so who cares if you get information on Jacobs?
Right. You could tell me he had 2,000 yards, I still wouldn't draft him.
All right, I'm going to do the exact opposite of what I did an hour ago when I was like, look, I'm not taking this exercise too literally. I'm doing it figuratively. Now I'm going to take it really literally because I think what you actually, the most advantageous player to know something about would be a player, I think, going in the late second round because they're available to you if you have an early draft slot. But if you got a really positive information on them, you could just take them at the opposite turn. So no matter what draft slot you get, you're getting access to this player at a really high leverage opportunity cost. And this is a player that fits that and a player that I think has a very wide range of outcomes. So I'll take the big dog, Derrick Henry.
Derrick Henry. Very interesting one. Because it also, if you found out that he got hurt, I think you're more in on Lamar. You're more in on Zay. I think
you're more in on
pass
Zay.
rate.
You're taking shots at Adam Randall.
You're taking Adam Randall late. Yeah, dude, I like the big dog. They're also probably just going to sign a veteran running back when that happens.
Probably. But I think it opens up a lot. It totally changes what you think of their offense. And then, like, if it's an absolute smash, I think his ADP is like 22 or something right now. So if it's an absolute smash, then that's just your second round pick. No matter what draft slot you get, that's your second round pick.
If he has 1,800 rushing yards and 17 TDs, which we know he can do, then I'm just drafting him in the second round, and I'm happy about that. I mean that's a great call. The veteran I realize that it's going to be on the Ravens if Derrick Henry gets hurt is Austin Eckler. That's where Austin Eckler winds up in the second half of the year.
I think it'll be a nice committee between Austin Eckler and Najee Harris.
And Najee Harris, there's another good one. Yeah, I mean after all the Melvin Gordon, Devonta Freeman, and all the other dudes we've had. Lev Bell. God, I forgot he was them. He was wearing number 17 on that team. Good Lord.
Kenyon Drake is on that team.
I'm going to do... God, I love the running backs. I want to just keep drafting running backs forever.
We can add an extra couple rounds. Why not?
Yeah, we may need to add a couple extra. I want to do Jadarian Price next. We talked about him on the running back show. Yeah. He's a strong... again, talent-based bet where... there's a lot of uncertainty. If we find out that it's a bad year, it unlocks some other plays. Like you might want to take Charbonnet later. You might want to even consider some George Halani late or whatever. But the other major thing is if he has a strong year, I think he can just take over the whole backfield and be a really big hit in this range. And so you'd have a really big piece of information about the dead zone, similar to your Henderson and Tuten conversation.
I love that pick. This guy's been top of my board for 8 rounds. I've just avoided doing it because it's so similar to your literal first pick. But I'll take Luther Burden, which I think is for very similar reasons to why you took Colston Loveland. But I think that what I like about your Loveland pick slightly more is you get the positional knowledge, certainly. But I also have so much confidence in Colston Loveland that if Luther Burden's if I get back bad information on Luther Burden, I'm prepared to just take that as positive information about Colston Loveland. Obviously, he could get hurt or something. Maybe they both get hurt. But I think one of the reasons that would explain why Luther Burden had, of the 3 Bears, I'll put it this way. Of the 3 Bears, he's the one I'm most uncertain about. I have a lot of conviction that Loveland is really good. I have somewhat conviction that Rome is not bad, but not a difference maker. Burden is the one I have the least conviction about in either direction. So it's the one where I think the information is the most meaningful to me, except for the point that you made, which is when you get actual information like also Loveland, then you just know exactly how to play tight end this year. So Loveland's a better pick, but I think Burton's a pretty similar pick.
That's a good one. I'm going to do Jayden Reed.
This is my next pick was going to be Matthew Golden. So
that's funny.
Same idea.
Same idea. Jayden Reed is the 2 receiver set theory, right? Like we'll learn information about whether Golden had a good year, maybe whether Christian Watson is actually worth playing, what the pass rate was. When I said I want to just keep taking running backs, Reed's the one that's been near the top of my list for a while. I also had Burton on my list, but obviously since I already took Loveland, I didn't want to put Burton. But Reed's the 2 receiver set stuff would just be. Well, obviously we wouldn't learn that, but we would learn. I think there's a possibility.
By proxy. Yeah.
Right. By proxy.
If you find out he has like 1,100 yards, that he's either playing in 2 receiver sets or you don't care, I guess.
Yeah. You're in on him. Yeah. If he has like 750, you're like, oh, well, Matthew Golden was probably a pretty good pick late. And similar to that worthy price tag where you're like, some of these receivers going really, really late are nice plays, have some upside options. And I'd learn a lot about both Reed and Golden in a key part of the receiver like draft range. Obviously, Reed goes a little higher.
I'm going to stay right in the same receiver range. If you hadn't taken Reed, I would have taken Golden, but now I'm just going to not because that's boring because it's the same pick. But I will stay in the same receiver range. I'll take KC Concepcion.
Yeah, that's a good one.
So you've already taken 2 rookie wide receivers. I'll take 1, and I also get a bit of a twofer because I do think he gives me information on how to play tight end this year because I'm one of the only reasons I'm not like, I mean, I am way overweight Fannin, but one of the reasons I'm not even more overweight Fannin is that I like KC so much. And I do wonder like how many Cleveland Browns are going to be massive success stories in 2026. But a bullish KC Concepcion confirmation. I mean, he's cheap enough. You can just get him on literally every team. And a bearish one would make me even more interested in Fannin for sure.
I'm going to take Breece Hall. He's the guy at the 2-3 turn I was thinking about, similar to your Derrick Henry play. I think he has some real ceiling. He's got a lot of talent-based ceiling. I think the Jets could actually wind up being a little better. They've added a lot of skill position talent. I mean, we hear this about the Jets every single year, but like Geno Smith's at least a vaguely competent quarterback, and they do actually have some depth there. I would really like to know if Breece Hall has a really good year. I mean, I think Garrett Wilson's a really good pick this year too, but this would be huge for the reasons you said about Henry. The other one is Jeremiah Love in this range. To me, the issue with picking Love is all I'm really learning about is Love. If he has a bad year, I don't really know if like the Cardinals were bad, if a different running back took the work, etc. I mean, that could be the case with Hall too, where I don't really know a lot, but I think if I knew Hall had a bad year, I'd feel more comfortable playing his backups a little bit and maybe playing Garrett Wilson, maybe playing the pass rate.
Oh, I feel the opposite actually. If I knew Hall had a good year, I would smash all the Jets pass catchers.
Yeah, that's a good point. That's because
I think that every single Jet is underpriced relative to their talent. I actually thought about picking Geno Smith. I won't now, but I think every Jet is underpriced relative to their talent pretty significantly. And if Breece had like a legitimately good year, that's telling me they have a functional offense. And then I probably want to be really invested in the Jets pass catchers.
I like that point. And it probably would apply to Jeremiah Love too. If he had a really good year, you'd feel better about the Cardinals offense. But I just do think the Cardinals situation figures to be...
Yeah.
I mean, they project for the fewest points in the league. The Jets are not massively higher, but they like the Cardinals have a really hard schedule, the hardest schedule in the league. And so, anyway, I think Jeremiah Love's a really good answer to this question. There's probably people listening to it like, how have you not named Jeremiah Love yet? Because he could be a breakout superstar.
I thought about him, yeah.
But I do think you learn a little bit more with Hall, and I guess I think Hall's the better pick in that range. I think he's the better actual fantasy pick, and so he's the one I want to know more about.
All right, we got a couple picks left here. I will do. I'll take Ja'Cory Krosky-Merritt.
Yeah. Come on.
So I mean, I've been pretty vocal that I think this Washington backfield is undervalued across the board. I'd be legitimately surprised if there wasn't a winner from this Washington backfield that was impactful. I think that the reason why I'm taking JCM is like if I picked White and I get really positive information on White, that's great. If I get negative information on White, I feel like I still have no idea who the winner is between JCM and Katron Allen. Like I would end up taking a lot of both of them, but I feel like that could flip. I think JCM is the one who cuts most both ways. I think if you receive really positive information on him, then he's the guy. I think if you don't, like, I think then Allen is more interesting, but I think White has to be the guy because I don't think Callan has any path of being like an every down guy. So I think JCM, but you can pick another Washington running back. I just think there's going to be a winner here. They're really cheap, and I'll take him.
It's a good one. I'm looking at the rest of my list. It's CMC and Puka. I already said why I didn't take them is basically just because it's kind of boring. And as far as Puka's concerned, you already took Adams, and you learn a lot of the similar stuff from the Adams pick, and has some of the same pitfalls where, like, if he has a bad year, it might be because of Stafford. It doesn't necessarily guarantee that it's other guys. But Puka, to me, is the one that can really run away with the position. I said this, and he's going 4. So it's like, yeah, a third of the first round you get information, but like he could have such a good line that you'd be into taking him, 101, and then McCaffrey is sort of the same thing. But I'm not going to take those. The other one is Caleb Williams, who I think is a really good quarterback pick, but we've already taken both Loveland and Burden. But I mean, I would love to know if he had a really great year because I do think it's going to be concentrated on these guys. It's the same reason we took Loveland and Burden. So I said a bit ago when I took Worthy, I had two earlier, like tied to 2 earlier picks. Worthy was tied to the Mahomes pick. Williams was too similar to the Loveland pick. And then now that you've taken Burden, I'm definitely not going to do it, which is just preamble for me to say that I'm going to take another random running back, or I'm actually going to take a late round QB here. This is kind of a weird one. I'm going to take Bo Nix.
Fun.
Bo Nix I think he's a fun one, right? You've kind of got me a little bit Jaylen Waddle curious. I'm not super into him. If Bo Nix has a great year, I want to be in on Waddle. I want to be in on Pat Bryant. And then the other thing is, like, I think RJ Harvey was like another way I could have tried to play into this offense.
I had him on my list.
Yeah. Harvey, Dobbins, you'd learn some information about them. You'd want to, they're all cheap enough that, like, if you knew that Bo Nix had a really good year, you could get access to Harvey, you get access to Dobbins, you get access to Jonah Coleman too. It doesn't give you a ton of information about who it is. But
I'm here from the future. I'll tell you right now, Bo Nix is going to have a good year. That's why I didn't pick him. I just already know he's going to have a good year.
I know he's a great target. I just want to know how good the year is. I want to. I mean, he throws a ton of passes, all that stuff. I want to. If he has I think the Broncos are an undervalued offense. I've said this multiple places. Totally. I have future bets on their win total over. Like I think they're just misunderstood, and I think they've been misunderstood for the better part of the last 12 months.
Yeah, I totally agree. Maybe I'll even get you in on Jaylen Waddle more at some point. We'll see. But I totally agree on Nix. I thought about him. Okay, I have one pick left here. I'm trying to do something fun. I feel like all the names I have on my list are like not that fun. So
yeah, we kind of already did all the fun ones.
Whatever. I'll just pick the top name on my list. I get the 2-3 turn factor again that I like. And I do think this is one of the more high variance profiles that we got going early in drafts. I'll take AJ Brown.
Oh, that's a good one.
The reason I didn't have him that high on my list is, like, if his stats are bad, I still don't really want to take that much Romeo Doubs. But, like, I guess I would.
I have Drake May.
I know that I'm not taking May if AJ Brown's stats suck. Yeah.
I have Drake May as a fade as the QB3. I think it clarifies the Drake May thing quite a bit. But I'm going to finish.
Part of my issue, though, is like but part of my issue is I feel like I'm only getting news on Brown. If Brown has a great year or a bad year, that doesn't really impact how I play the running backs. If Brown has a great year, that's good news for May. I think he's really overvalued where he's going, so I don't know if I'd actually still take him. If he has a bad year, I would affirm a fade I'm already going to do, and I don't really like anybody else on the team. That's why he was low on my list, but I do think that A.J. Brown himself matters a lot this year in fantasy and would inform how I draft to a large degree. And I think he has, like, legitimately has upside of being one of the top 5 wide receivers in fantasy if he gets back to being 2024 A.J. Brown with by far the best quarterback he's ever played with. And there's, like, a possibility his knee is just cooked and he's a massive landmine. So I do think he's a pretty high variance player.
Love that. Great one. Great talent-based bet that we have some uncertainty on and very similar to your Nabers pick earlier as well. And the guy that when you brought this up was, I think, the first guy I
nice.
said to you. I think if we did this last year, he would have been our 101. We were both very into him. I think we're both just a little bit snake bitten, but I'm going to close it out.
I just sullied the waters by doing Mendoza is what happened.
That may have been a big part
I already
of it.
dove in on the Raiders and then we already knew what was going on with Brock Bowers because of my genius Mendoza pick. So
your Mendoza pick gave us such great information. I'm going to take Brock Bowers with the final pick.
Nice.
It would be extremely helpful to the tight end picture to know what Brock Bowers did. Very similar to the Colston Loveland pick that I opened my draft with, and so obviously Brock Bowers, if he has a massive year, is. And then you get the element of the second round pick thing that you've been saying, where depending on where you're drafting at, you know whether or not you need to reach on him. You get some value to him. People don't want to take him super high in single tight end like home leagues. He's going like later in the second, and so I mean if you're
I totally
first
forgot
round,
he had a late 2 ADP because I don't have him right there, but
Right.
he does in fact have a late 2 ADP.
so you could just take him middle of the second round, early second round, whatever. I mean if you're late first, you could take him late first and then just take someone else in the early second to make sure to get him. But if he has the year that we all know is kind of in there for Brock Bowers, you'd make sure to get him in the early rounds. He would be a really huge piece to have. Doesn't tell you a lot about other people, but if he has a really bad year, the thing about him for last year, the reason I brought him up when you brought up this idea to me months ago was if we would have known Brock Bowers last year, I would have been all in on Trey McBride. I was writing that and talking about that concept.
Yeah.
I was super in on Bowers, but if Bowers gets hurt, I'll be like, I also really like McBride. The way that I do these big tier breaks. I had a big tier break after McBride, before Kittle. A lot of people had Kittle there, and I was like, no, it's these two profiles. But I had a tier separating them. I had two single player tiers. It was weird,
right?
But I felt strongly that you should prioritize Bowers. When I did I also do partial tier breaks. It's a whole convoluted process. But when I did my tight end tiers article, I had tier 1A and tier 1B is the way that I broke it up. So like similar tier, but I thought you should prioritize Bowers. But my whole logic was like, if I knew Bowers was bad, the only other guy that I thought had that kind of profile was McBride. The only reason it's slightly different this year is you have Loveland. I think you still have Warren also that are that high. Fannin to me is a little bit, he's really interesting, but a little bit further back because of offensive stuff and all that. But you have two young dudes in Loveland and Warren, and maybe Fannin even, that can run down Bowers and McBride, I think, this year, that I don't think was as clear last year behind the two of them. At any rate, I still think you get a lot of information if you don't, if you find out bad things about Bowers, about how to play McBride, Loveland, Warren, the top of the tight end position. It would be really helpful info. Are there other one of the other things I had is like a classification. I never took any of these guys, was like the injury rehab tight ends, Tucker Kraft, George Kittle, Sam Laporta.
Yeah.
I think that would help that position. I had Sadiq, Gadsden, and Jawan on another line. I never took any of them.
I had Sadiq, Gadsden, T-Ferg on one of my
T-Ferg. Yeah. Are there other guys or learning more about tight end?
All the rookies would be interesting. Basically, pick and choose whichever one. I think that the similar reasoning for Tuten and Henderson. I could have thrown Bucky Irving as another guy that I think would be interesting to know a lot about. I think the year two quarterbacks would be interesting for the state of those offenses. Shuck was a guy that I had on my list, and I think just the weapons are less exciting for Cam Ward and for Jackson Dart, but you could make a similar case for them. Dart, especially, is a guy that if his stats are really good, that's just your late round quarterback for the year. Those were guys that were on my list. Who else was out there for you?
No, I think those are great ones, great honorable mentions. I would throw out, when you were doing some of the running back like Bucky and then the backup. I mean, I would throw out Saquon Barkley, similar to your Derrick Henry play, and then there's a clean backup in Tank Bigsby I really like. Totally. If I knew that Barkley had a bad year, I think I would. It's almost like you could take Bigsby. Like I took Lloyd instead of Jacobs. You could almost just say I'm taking Bigsby. I want to know if he has 500 yards or more. Then I know a lot about Barkley too. Totally. But we mentioned the RJ Harvey and like Dobbins stuff. There's a lot of running back stuff, obviously. I mean, Jalen Warren and Dowdle, if you got information about that, would be really helpful. DeAndre Swift, I think, would be kind of interesting. I mean, he's a weird one, but the Bears offense is so interesting, and you could play that through. You could say Monongai instead, but all of those, uncertain running back rooms, Scattaboo and Tyrone Tracy. I mean, you can learn a lot out of playing any of those in this type of a setting. And
totally.
But yeah, I think there's a ton of fun ones. I didn't have a ton of other
Your 3 receivers I didn't pick any of them because a lot of them are in like weirdly unconcentrated offenses where I felt like I don't actually learn that much about the other guys on their teams. But I think Ladd, BTJ, Harrison, and Rome are like all like very wide range of outcomes players in their own right that would be interesting to know enough about.
Yes, Harrison.
And a lot of them are guys I'm not taking. So yeah.
Harrison and Wilson were 2 that I was thinking about just because that's a concentrated one. I was giving you crap about Hunter because it's a less concentrated offense. I've had a hard time with the Cardinals one because it really has to be Harrison or Wilson, it feels like, along with McBride, obviously.
And Love.
And Love, yeah. So, I mean, you get a lot of a running back and a tight end presence, but it would be interesting to know a little bit about, like, Wilson, about Harrison.
Yeah.
Ibuka would be an interesting one, and then you get some information.
A very interesting one. Yeah.
You get some Godwin information. You did Burden, those kind of upside plays. I did Jameson Williams, those kinds of receivers in that range. Garrett Wilson, Tedero McMillan would be really good ones. You basically did Flowers by doing Lamar. Yeah. I mean, obviously, there's a lot of good ones.
I actually thought about Bryce Young for McMillan and Coker-based reasons. Yeah.
I mean, we're sort of just naming a lot of players that we think have upside, that we think have concerns and red flags, but could be upside plays, and that's sort of the name of the game in fantasy, that have good long views profiles. We spent a lot of time talking about guys that have good long view profiles, even if they've been hurt and stuff, like Marshawn Lloyd and Jonathan Brooks, and like, look, these guys could be stars still. Like, it can still happen if they can stay healthy. If you look at our lists here, our final lists, it's a lot of guys that we really liked as prospects. It's a lot of long view type players that we think could emerge, could be breakout players, could have real ceilings. It's like a dynasty draft in some ways, but that's the way you should think about redraft broadly. That's the point of our long view podcast.
I mean, that's the reason why I came up with this exercise. Is like, one, it's kind of a fun gimmick, but I think it forces you to think through important elements to fantasy, which is like, who are these uncertainty-based profiles that have a lot of upside? What are these contingent levers where if you pull one thing, 3 or 4 different assumptions can be made about what would happen that really impacts the story of the season? What are the positional groups that you most want to know about how to play it one particular way? These are all the types of questions we should be asking anyway when we're making projections, or when we're deciding our structural strategy of how we want to orient our teams, thinking through which teams might have hidden upside that we're not necessarily accounting for. I mean, all that's the stuff that you want to get through. So I think thinking through, it's kind of a fun way to do it, but it gets you onto a lot of different concepts, I think, that are integral for playing redraft fantasy football effectively. As we now sit here 3 hours and 16 minutes into the show.
do our plugs so we can go home.
Yeah, I mean, look, we're not going to be leaping to the top of the search engine charts with 3 hour, 16-minute shows. So if you want to support us, continuing to do this, we would appreciate Patreon. We were talking pre-show that we're going to do drafts soon. So we haven't scheduled exactly when those are going to be, but stay tuned. That's going to happen shortly. Then we'll do some draft episodes. Those are going to be for the Patreon subscribers only. And otherwise, thanks so much for the feedback. Download the show, subscribe to the podcast, become a member, review, all that good stuff, like buttons, etc.
Yeah, just to follow up your point about the Patreon thing, for anyone who doesn't know the details and the things that we've talked about, we are going to do a weekly show, sort of hell or high water. You're going to get it from us. They're often going to be long like this. It is the long view. Those will be free. You'll continue to get those. You don't have to worry about it. We're going to do the draft shows in addition occasionally, especially here in August. We'll probably do a few. We may do several. We don't really know yet, but I mean, we want to draft together some. We want to test out some of these things. We are going to throw those ones behind the paywall. Ideally, it's not blocking off too much information for those of you that feel like we're paywalling stuff. Most of our conversations, again, will be on the free side, but come join us over there if you want to get everything that we talk about. We're trying to raise some funds there. So support the show, and thanks for hanging out.
Awesome, man. Good show.
Yeah.